Call to order the October 15th, 2024 meeting of the North Andover Planning Board. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the North Andover Planning Board will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, in-person attendance of members of the public and board members will be permitted. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting live may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 26, or my favorite, online at www.northandovercam.org. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Town and North Andover website an audio or video recording transcript or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible. Anyone who would like to participate in any public hearing but not attend the meeting in person may email your question or comment prior to or during the meeting to Jean Enright at JENRIGHT at northandoverma.gov. Question or comment will be read during the proceeding and responded to accordingly. Jean, can you please take roll?
Sean Kevelim.
Here.
John Simons.
Here.
Eitan Gober.
I am here.
Peter Boynton.
Aye.
Christopher Kasoris.
Here.
Kate Kelly.
Okay. Kate, welcome. Kate is our new associate member. So welcome, Kate. Welcome. You're new to North Andover, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, welcome to town and jumping right in. Well, and you picked the easiest board to jump into, so congratulations. All right. As an associate member, feel free to contribute. I don't think we need you to vote on anything tonight, but we welcome your comments and questions. Okay, here's going to be the order. We have a very full agenda, so we're going to try to get through it as expeditiously as possible, but there's a lot to go over. We're going to start with the bond release, then we'll do the discussion item because we have some guests appearing via remotely. Then we'll go into continued public hearings, then we'll do new public hearings, then we'll do discussion items. If for some reason you need something earlier, talk to Jean and we can try to move you up. Okay, bond release, excuse me, 173 Johnson Street, David Martin, request for release of a $4,000 performance bond associated with a November 2023 watershed special permit, which allowed for the construction of an addition to a single-family home. Jean, can you tell us about that?
So the plan is up. If you recall, it was a small addition for a kitchen off the back of the house here and a patio. The addition's complete. The site has been stabilized. The required as-built plan has been submitted, and the engineer certification letter are all included in your meeting packet.
Okay. Any issues, Jean?
No.
So, okay, can I get a motion to approve the bond release for 173 Johnson Street?
So moved. Second.
Whoa. All right, who made the motion? We'll go with Sean. Seconded by Peter. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that's approved. Accessory dwelling unit legislation. Attorney. Yep.
So as discussed, Attorney Amy, if I say it right, Quesel from KP Law has presented on the recently passed Affordable Homes Act through the American Planning Association. Amy has agreed to attend the meeting to review the act and respond to any comments or questions that the board may have. So
Okay.
as you know, I shared the webinar link that she did prepare a presentation for.
Okay, and so just a little bit by way of background for anyone who may be watching, KP Law is a law firm in Boston. They specialize in municipal law, among other things. So this is a great get for us to have. The accessory dwelling unit legislation that we're discussing is part of the recently enacted Affordable Homes Act. And basically what it does is it makes accessory dwelling units by right throughout the state. This legislation applies to all 351 municipalities in Massachusetts, and we will be drafting a bylaw that covers accessory dwelling units, adding it to our Dover bylaw. But we're really at this point trying to learn what we can and what we can't do, and then from there we'll decide what we want to do based on what we're allowed to do. So that's kind of the background. So Amy, I'll turn it over to you, and then we'll go to the board for questions, and then if there are any questions that come in, Jean, let me know. If there's people in the audience that want to ask questions, we'll probably be open to that as well. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, Amy Questle from KP Law. Um, and you summarized it 100% correct. The Affordable Homes Act in Section 7, it added a definition of accessory dwelling unit. And then in Section 8, it amends 48 Section 3 to require that, or to provide, I should say, that accessory dwelling units are exempt from zoning in certain instances. But just to begin with, the definition of the accessory dwelling unit, it basically says that it's a self-contained housing unit. It's and it is on the same lot as the principal dwelling unit, and it can maintain a separate entrance either directly from the outside or through an entry hall or corridor shared with the principal dwelling, which means, which we interpret to be that it can either be detached or attached. And it cannot be larger than half of the gross floor area of the principal dwelling or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. So it's important to note that an accessory dwelling unit cannot ever be larger than 900 square feet. And then there are, the definition does allow for additional restrictions. Those additional restrictions can be limited to additional size restrictions or restrictions or prohibitions on short-term rentals. However, it does state in the definition, which is a little bit peculiar, it states in the definition that a municipality cannot unreasonably restrict the creation or rental of an accessory dwelling unit that is not a short-term rental. So that's the definition, which is Section 7. And then Section 8, Section 8 is what, it's going to amend Section 3 of the zoning bylaw, which allows for exemptions for agriculture, education, religion. And it says no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall prohibit, unreasonably restrict, or require a special permit or other discretionary zoning approval for the use of land or structures for a single accessory dwelling unit or the rental thereof in a single family residential zoning district. So that's the beginning of Section 8. And it's important to note that a single family residential zoning district is not defined. We're interpreting that as any zoning district that allows for single family residential. And it goes on to say that provided the use of land or structures for such accessory dwelling unit may be subject to reasonable regulations, including but not limited to Title V, site plan review, and then regulations concerning dimensional setbacks and the bulk and height of structures. It also can prohibit short-term rental. However, it may not, it specifically states in Section 8 that may not require owner occupancy of either the accessory dwelling unit or the principal dwelling. And then you cannot require more than one parking space. And if it's within a half a mile of a commuter rail, subway, ferry, or bus station, you cannot require any parking. So that is with regard to a single accessory dwelling unit. It's allowed as of right. You can require one parking space. You can require minimal, reasonable dimensional requirements. You cannot require owner occupancy. So this is going to do away with any bylaw that has a in-law apartment that's required to be for family. And then the Section 8 goes on to say that for more than one accessory dwelling unit or rental thereof in a single family residential zoning district, there shall be a special permit for the use of land or structures for accessory dwelling unit. And so because they use the word there shall be a special permit, we are interpreting this to, that more than one accessory dwelling unit can be allowed. However, once it's more than one, it has to be by special permit. And then the last sentence of Section 8 states that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which is EOHLC, which is the former DHCD, may issue guidelines or promulgate regulations to administer this PERIC. And a couple weeks ago, I was informed that the secretary of HLC did indicate at a, he was out in Western Massachusetts, and he did indicate that HLC would be issuing guidelines, but apparently they were in no rush to issue guidelines. So
Wonderful.
presumably guidelines will be coming. Now, Section 7, which is the definition, that is in effect immediately. However, Section 8 is not in effect immediately. Section 8, it takes place within 180 days of the enactment of the Affordable Homes Act, which was August 6th. And so the 180 days brings us to February 2nd of 2025. That is a Sunday. However, it is what it is. So on Sunday, February 2nd, one ADU on a lot in a zoning district that allows for a single family use would be allowed as of right. And so, there's a lot of concern by communities in the Commonwealth because almost no bylaw right now. There's no accessory dwelling unit bylaw that probably fits into Section 7 and Section 8. And so, cities and towns are wondering what they do and when they do, when they amend, how they amend their bylaw and when they amend their bylaw. If you're going to amend your bylaw right away in the fall, I suggest, you could definitely adopt the definition of ADU that's found in Section 7 that will be codified into 40A Section 1A, which is the definition section of 40A.
So we plan to just start our public hearing process at the end of January, and draft a bylaw and start at the end of January, and then have it for our Springtown meeting, which is at the end of May.
That's great. So that's actually what I'm leaning towards for every, it's up to you guys, obviously, as the planning board, but
Yeah.
that is probably what I would recommend, because that will give us time to see what HLC does with their guidelines. And then the other thing is, while you are, things that you need to consider with regard to a new bylaw with, for ADUs is that, while the act specifically says that these ADUs may be subject to site plan review, it's something that, that you should think about, because when you think about a site plan review, you're thinking about internal circulation, landscaping, interior islands, pedestrian access. You're also thinking about screening, things like that. So there's really not a lot of site plan review that goes into looking at an ADU. Obviously, there's screening requirements, there's parking, where you want to put that one parking space. There could be an opportunity to enact a, more of an administrative site plan review. But again, that would be up to the planning board. You could subject ADUs to site plan review. It is specifically allowed for under Section 8 of the Affordable Homes Act. So it can be done. But it is something that a lot of planning boards are thinking about, do we really need every single ADU to come to us? Because some of these ADUs will be attached to a single family residence. So normally you wouldn't have an addition to a single family residence in front of you for site plan review. So, that is something, something to think about. The other, so Jean had mentioned that I had done a webinar for the APA, and I actually did 2 webinars. They were the same webinar, 2 separate sessions. I was just bombarded with questions. And so, some of the questions had to do with pre-existing non-conforming structures, and if you're going to add to it with an ADU, the ADU is allowed. And, my answer to that is that the ADU use is allowed. That structure, if it's still non-conforming, you are still extending a pre-existing non-conforming structure. And so, there's times when we're going to have to remember the difference between the use and the structure. And then the other thing is that the Section 8 of the Affordable Homes Act specifically allows for, or specifically states that Title V is still in effect. So if you have a dwelling, say a 4-bedroom dwelling, and they're going to add an ADU, it's automatically adding a bedroom. So you're now looking at a 5 bedrooms on that lot. So whatever that septic system is, it has to comply with 5 bedrooms. So there are times when, an ADU is going to it's going to result in the increase of a leaching field or a new Title V septic system, something like that. So while it appears that, ADUs, because they're allowed as of right by this legislation, there's this fear that they're going to pop up everywhere. That's not necessarily going to happen because there are some parameters that, have to be reviewed. And the biggest one is, is Title V. The other thing is that you are allowed to, in your bylaw, you are allowed to, regulate dimensional controls. And, one of the things that I would look at is your lot coverage, because if your lot coverage is so low right now that it really would prohibit accessory dwelling units, that could be an issue, because that could be that the bylaw is not in line with the legislation. And so I do have one town already that has come to me and said that their lot coverage is way too low, and it would never allow. Their lot coverage is low, and most of the houses in the town are already at capacity for lot coverage. And so in that instance, they're looking at increasing the lot coverage only for ADUs. So they're not going to increase lot coverage for the entire zoning district. They're only increasing lot coverage for ADUs. So basically what they're saying is something along the lines of 15% lot coverage, except when there's an ADU, it would bump up to, say, 18% lot coverage or something like that. So these are all things to think about when you're discussing, your bylaw.
Okay, that's very helpful. So why don't I just want to mention a couple of things, and then I think we can turn to questions. I have a bunch of listed questions, but which I can go first, or if people want to have specific things. But a couple of things I just want to remind people in the public about. It's kind of an interesting dynamic because this law is coming to us, being kind of handed to us, and so we're treating it sort of in a reactionary way and writing a bylaw and figuring out what we can and can't do. But I do want to, we still should, and so we have to do a bylaw, so we're not as much talking about what are the reasons behind affordable accessory dwelling units, why are we having them, what's the benefits. We're not really talking about as much of that because we have to do a bylaw. But I do want to kind of remember that, we've been talking about accessory dwelling units just kind of in general for a while. And one of the things that we've talked about in many meetings and that I've been a particular proponent of is having different types of housing choices. Peter talked to us about how having an accessory dwelling unit was really important to him when early on in his family, and how that was really helpful for him. And so this is a great tool to be used to kind of create different housing choices and options. It will increase our housing supply. I don't think it's going to increase it very much, but it gives different options for people. So I think that's a positive, and I just don't want to kind of forget that as we talk about the kind of the nitty-gritty of what we can and can't do, because we're kind of coming at it from a reactionary place. So I just want to kind of remember that. So some of the things I heard that we just have to remember is that we cannot restrict owner occupancy in these. We cannot restrict it to any particular familial relationships. So those things we just can't do. One of the other things that's difficult, I find, is that I don't find the legislation particularly well drafted. Now, drafting legislation is very difficult, but this one seems extremely vague in places that are, as by the amount of questions that you got from in the webinar, there are
I would agree.
places that it is very vague. So for instance, it says single-family district. It doesn't define it, and every town has different definitions of how they do their zoning districts. We don't have a single-family district now. We have, you know, we have, you know, it's a single family, one family, but we have districts that allow for single family. So I think one of the questions that we've bandied about, and it was sort of discussed, is that if it's being thought of as districts that allow single family, well, we have most of our districts, most allow some sort of single family, but also allow two families or multifamilies or commercial or mixed use. Where does this apply? And what I'm from trying to understand the reason behind the law is it's an accessory dwelling unit, so it's accessory. It's supposed to be in addition to, and a dwelling unit, so it's supposed to basically be attached to what's called a principal dwelling, which I mean, I'm basically interpreting it as a single-family home, right? You take a single-family home, you add on something to it, and you have an ADU. Is that basically what they're trying to get at?
So I think that that's probably the, I think that's definitely what the legislature intended. However, they state throughout Section 7 and 8 of the Affordable Homes Act, they state that it's for in a single family residential zoning district. However, they only refer to the dwelling as the principal dwelling.
Right.
And so.
And they don't define principal dwelling, right?
Correct. So they don't define it, and they do not further restrict it to single family principal dwelling.
Well, yeah, the
So
permutation
that's a little bit scary.
Right.
that is directly relevant to us is in the R4 district, where there are a lot of two families.
Right.
And so the question I would have is, if you have an existing two-family, is each one allowed to cobble on an ADU on that? It's not clear.
So,
So I would say that if you have an existing two-family, that two-family would be allowed one ADU, because that existing two-family dwelling is the principal dwelling.
but how can it be a principal dwelling if two different families dwell in it?
Because it's the structure. If it's one structure.
And
It-
who?
it-
But
it's
then,
very
right?
difficult.
Don't our
It's
two
very
families have two
difficult.
ownership?
Oh, it does. I mean,
Right,
it
I-
might be
Ownership
an
is
element of a condominium.
Right, no,
so
I get
two
ownership's
separate
different,
ownerships.
but-
And the land's probably not owned in common either.
Right. So who gets?
yeah.
So who gets the?
Who gets
the accessory
yeah,
dwelling
I
unit?
mean,
Whoever applies for it first. It doesn't seem. I agree that the law seems to say or leave open that possibility, but I can't imagine that was the legislative intent of saying a two-family. Now you get one, or like who's to say which gets it, and is it the owner? And then now you bought into a two-family, so the owner can just add another third rental unit, and now is living behind these other people. It seems to me that the intent was to be on a single-family home, and the craftsmanship is lacking.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah,
When you
Chris, go ahead.
When you discussed lot coverage, so we're still gonna have to meet our basic zoning guidelines for our town, right? The ADU law is not gonna go past, say, our setbacks are out, our lot coverage gets moved, or is it a moving target when it comes to that?
So it's somewhat of a moving target. I really believe that you can keep your dimensional setbacks. And that's something to look at when you do your bylaw for ADUs, because, do you want to reduce the setbacks on the side or the rear or something like that? But I don't think that there's any, I don't think there's anything that would say that you have to reduce them. I definitely think that, there could be a challenge if you increase the setbacks to an accessory dwelling unit,
Right.
meaning, you can have a house 15 feet from the sideline, but your accessory dwelling unit, which is only 900 square feet, has to be 40 feet from the side setback. But it's the lot coverage has come up the most. But it's really only when you have a town that currently has a very restricted lot
So,
coverage.
yeah, we don't have our lot coverage is mostly for businesses, so we don't have to worry
Okay,
about that one.
So you guys, yeah.
That one's
So
fine.
you should be fine. The other thing is that, the other question that I had at one of the seminars was, can you prohibit an accessory dwelling unit within the front yard? And so the first thing is that, do you have a definition of front yard? Because not all zoning bylaws do. And if it's just the front setback, then yes, you could prohibit an accessory dwelling unit within the front setback. That would be, that would have to be a variance. That would be like any other structure in a setback. It gets a little bit more tricky if you don't have a definition of a front yard, meaning from the principal structure to the street or something, defined. Not a lot of cities and towns have that definition. And then the question was, can you restrict an accessory dwelling unit from only to place it only to the rear of the principal dwelling? And again, I'm not sure that could be subject to challenge. I think, again, if you require that the accessory dwelling unit meets all the setbacks of the principal dwelling unit, I think you would be fine. And again, keeping it out of the front setback, things like that, I think would be fine. It gets a little bit dicier if you're trying to limit it further on the lot, I think.
So I have a quick, just clarification question. So when they specify 900 square feet structure, is that a physical structure or is it 900 square feet of living area?
Or gross floor
It's
area.
gross floor area.
Gross floor area, okay.
Okay.
Yep.
That was my number one question that I
Yeah.
had. Not in terms of importance, just on my list. Okay, some other questions. So, okay. So we have other requirements in certain districts. So, like for instance, our lake is our water source. So if you live near the lake, you're in a watershed special permit district, and if you want to build a pool or an addition or anything like that, you need to get a watershed special permit. If you disturb over an acre of land, you have to get a land disturbance permit. Obviously, conservation. We're assuming that if you need to get other permits, just because you're building an ADU does not excuse you from getting any other permits that you would normally have to get.
Correct.
Okay, all right, including the Title V. Okay, all right. Trailers or mobile homes, can they be prohibited, however mounted?
So the accessory dwelling unit, the definition is a self-contained housing unit, inclusive of sleeping, cooking, and sanitary facilities on the same lot as a principal dwelling. So it appears that, a trailer or a mobile home with the wheels removed would probably qualify as accessory dwelling unit.
Okay. If we have an overlay district that allows for single-family use, but the underlying zoning district doesn't, could you apply for an ADU, do you think, under the overlay district?
Probably. Do you really have an overlay district that allows for single family?
We have overlay districts we have way too many overlay districts that allow for lots of different things, which is a problem for another day, but we keep having other issues that we have to deal with that we haven't had time to deal with it, so probably, yes.
I would say that, in my opinion, right now, that would probably qualify as a single family residential zoning district.
I think so too. Okay. Now, you mentioned that one or more ADU. Again, it seems to me kind of crazy that something accessory could have more than one. Like you could put 5 accessory dwelling units on one unit. If you had a 5,000 square foot house, you could put, 3 accessories or 2 or 3 accessory dwelling units. That seems kind of crazy because it doesn't seem accessory at that point. But the way I read the law is sort of the way I sometimes read criminal laws is that it says if if you're going to do multiple ones, it has to be by special permit, but it doesn't seem to say that you have to allow it. So, I mean, I guess there's nuance there, is whether you have to allow multiple. I think our preference likely would be just to say you can only have one per lot. What is your kind of reading on that?
So this has really put us through the ringer, Mr. Chairman. We've kicked this around our firm, and I've met with planners on this and talked to the AG on this. And you know, basically the law, Section 8 says, for more than one accessory dwelling unit or rental thereof in a single-family residential zoning district, there shall be a special permit for the use of land or structures for an accessory dwelling unit. It appears that it's basically saying that you have to allow more than one accessory dwelling unit by special permit. Now, I'm hoping that HLC will address this in their guidelines to clear this up, because it's very muddy.
Yeah, it seems to me, again, that the shall is modifying the mechanism by which you would allow it. See, because, my background started in criminal law, so there are places where it says the punishment shall be incarceration for 2.5 years, but you could also get probation, right? So if you go to jail, you have to do it for a certain amount of time. The shall modifies the sentence, but doesn't modify actually whether you allow it or not. So, and I don't know, maybe I'm reading it that way because I want to read it that way, because I think that's how it should be. But it seems like the shall is modifying the condition of how you, because it makes sense. If you're going to have more than one, it can't be by right. It's got to be at least by special permit. And so I think, seems to me that was thrown in there to appease some legislators that were worried about it.
That's what I think. I think that this was not very well thought out, and I think this probably was thrown in there. But you know, it's unusual for the legislation to tell a municipality what they can allow by special permit and what they can't. You know, that they have to allow something by special permit. Because, you know, obviously a town can allow something as of right if they want to. So it is, you know, it is unusual.
And if we were to do it,
I really don't think that you would be subject to multiple accessory dwelling units because of dimensional controls. You know, and furthermore, any additional accessory dwelling unit would have to be under 900 square feet, because to be considered an ADU, it has to be less than 900 square feet.
right? Are there any dimensional requirements for how far ADUs have to be from each other? So let's say you had a townhouse, and I think I could read that a townhouse, if it's two houses, could get two, or you could you put two on top of each other, like to stack up, you know, stack them on top of each other, put a separate egress on either side, and now you have your two-family just became a residence for 4 families, and you're not extending anything any closer to the neighbors, you're just on top of each other. Gene, any thoughts on whether you could, I mean, would anything in our zoning bylaw right now prohibit that? I don't think so. What?
Height.
Well,
But
the other thing-
1-2, you already have a 35-foot structure. If each of these is 1 floor.
Well, no, if you don't raise the roof, then.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and again,
So another thing to remember is that all state regulations obviously are still in play here. So the state building code would still be in play.
yeah.
And so, I think the state building code is any building or property with 3 or more units has to be sprinklered. So
Okay, that's fair.
Somebody would have to look into that. Again, these units cannot be just simply placed down. They have to, they need a building permit. They need, proper engineering. Again, Title V has to be taken into consideration. So, I guess I'm hoping it's unlikely that there will be, properties with multiple ADUs on them.
One of the things, obviously, that it's intended to be by right, so where things are by right, are we allowed to put in that we wouldn't accept requests for variances? So like, if it's gonna be by right, if you can meet it, so let's say, for what we're kind of talking about and banding about is, okay, let's say we have a ADU that's attached, it's gonna be 500 square feet, it's gonna be attached to the main dwelling and just kind of look like the main dwelling. There doesn't seem to be much reason for site plan review or anything that's by right, and you just add it on. But if it's gonna be separate and detached, or, have a different look, or be a mobile home without wheels, then we may wanna go the site plan review route. But can we say that no variances are allowed to be requested, that if you're gonna do it by right, it has to be by right? You have to
So,
meet the zoning.
no, I would say that, well, first of all, the use has to be allowed by right.
Yep,
And so, I apologize, I don't know your zoning bylaw enough to know that if you even allow for use variances. But you wouldn't.
no, we
have-
don't allow for use variances.
Okay, but you wouldn't have to, because the use is allowed by right. The dimensional, there could be an instance where a dimensional variance is necessary, and they would have the right to, in my opinion, they would have the right to apply for a dimensional variance, because 48 Section 10 allows for dimensional variances if the three prongs are met. It's also important to note that dimensional variances in general should not be granted. They should be granted sparingly.
Should be.
So,
Should be.
it would be hard
say that
to
for 40 years.
present an argument that you have a hardship, that you need an ADU when you already have a single-family dwelling on the property, in my opinion.
Okay, that's fair. And when we also have we have a family suite bylaw that allows for for up to 1,200 square feet, but it does have the requirements, familial relationship, that it needs to be compatible with design and architecture, things like that. I assume we can keep that as long as we have if we wanted to, as long as we have a standalone ADU bylaw that meets state law.
Correct.
Okay.
So, yes, you could keep your existing bylaw, provided that you allow ADUs as of right.
Have you heard any concerns from other groups or municipalities about having kind of these dual tracks, like one that allows more but has more restrictions, while also keeping the state mandated ADU bylaw?
So, there are municipalities that are looking into doing that. They're looking into having, for example, ADUs that are larger than that are allowed by state law. And my only caveat to that is that I suggest it be named something different. So don't name it an ADU, because it's not going to fit the definition. So one town came out with ADU/XL because it's going to be larger, but it has to have a different name. It has to be named something different, because it won't fit the definition of ADU in the bylaw.
Can we regulate any of the design and architecture to say that it needs to be compatible with the primary residence?
Not unless you do that with an addition, for example.
Okay,
Which
so we do it with a family
really-
suite, but not with an addition. Well, some
Yeah,
places
so-
we do, well, it depends. I mean, not generally in single family. There are some of our business districts, we require New England type architecture, things like that. Some new districts, we do create it, but generally not for single family home districts.
I actually have a question following that vein.
Okay,
Hey,
go ahead.
Tom. So, is it reasonable to restrict separate utility metering if it's a detached structure?
So that question was asked of me at the APA webinar, and honestly, I don't really know. Zoning cannot control that. So zoning can't control utility hookups in any event. So I guess I don't think you can, because even if it says, that you can't have a separate electrical, utility, I don't know how zoning can control that. And I don't know how that would be regulated, actually.
Don't we have a
Through
zoning
zone.
bylaw to underground utilities?
No, that's the planning board rules and regulations.
Okay.
That is with subdivision control.
On
You can
subdivision control,
require
right, if it's subdivision.
underground utilities. And that's not the issue. I think the issue is can you require more than one utility hookup
Yep.
to the property?
No,
And I
and,
think that in a way, that could be perceived as regulating ownership, which you're not allowed to regulate with zoning. But
that-
again, my answer at the webinar, and I guess my answer here would be, which would be, I don't know, unfortunately.
and there's a question about ownership too, that I think it was somewhat addressed at the webinar of whether or not, you can require that the ADU unit be in a same ownership as the principal dwelling. They have to be on the same lot.
Yeah.
But it would seem to me that I don't think you can. But because I think you could, I think you had mentioned in the webinar about condo, but even separately, you could, one thing could be owned by one corporation, the others could be owned by LLCs, and they could all be under, even if not a condo, I mean, you could still make them into LLCs, and as long as, I think
But
that
you'd
would be
have to
fine.
go through the actual statutory condominium process at Land Court.
Okay,
You'd have to create a valid condominium. You couldn't just say, oh, we're a condominium. It would have to be, you'd have to go under Chapter 83.
okay. Oh, we talked, okay. All right, so we got that. Okay, I think that's most of the questions that I had listed. Do you guys have anything else I mean, that's a lot. Okay. Yeah, Jean, please.
Of affordability. So I know that it would be unreasonable to require affordability for an ADU at a single family, but could our Affordable Housing Trust be a mechanism to partner with an owner if they want to get into either a rental assistance program or a down payment program with the Affordable Housing Trust, that they could require affordability?
I think they can, Jean. I do. And it's the program through the Affordable Housing Trust that would require the deed writer. So we obviously have to have a deed restriction. We have to have a deed writer to qualify the unit for the SHI. And that would have to be done through the Affordable Housing Trust. We couldn't require it through zoning.
And potentially, they could require it just for the AD unit and not for the principal dwelling.
Right. I think so, yes.
Is there anywhere where we could go and look for, or a compendium of some of the legislative discussion on this? Because I think the thing I think the biggest thing to me is the multiple ADUs as well as ADUs on non-single family homes. And I just can't imagine that was really the legislative intent behind all of this. And it's regrettable that we're not getting guidance soon, because we as a town have to, if we're going to do anything, we have, from now 3 months to try to put together a bylaw and then have public hearings and things like that. So we don't have a lot of time to kind of move things forward, and certainly guidelines would be helpful, but just to anywhere where we could look, just so that we could kind of, I don't know, get some
Sure, we did look in the
help.
legislative history
Yeah.
and there wasn't a lot.
Okay.
Yes. And then the other thing to remember is that, when we're talking about multiple ADUs, they have to be allowed by special permit. And so it's not a situation with multiple ADUs where February 2nd comes and everybody starts applying for multiple ADUs. They're definitely not allowed as of right.
And the special permit criteria we don't have to revert to kind of like the Dover stuff of reasonable regulations. We can go to our normal kind of stricter special permit requirements if we wanted to do that, right?
I think so, because
I would hope,
because it specifically states that it shall require a special permit. So that also creates another, somewhat of a conflict with the legislation, because how are you going to ever show that multiple ADUs on a single family lot is not more detrimental to the neighborhood, because it's unlikely that you're going to have other properties with multiple ADUs. So kind of, it's another thing they just didn't think through. It was not well thought through, in my opinion.
Okay. All right, Gene, anything else you think we missed?
Nope, that's everything.
Okay, well, I think you hit all of our questions. I think this was very helpful for us to help start guiding us on the process. So
Great. If you need
Amy.
anything else from us, just let us know.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Bye.
Well, I guess I should have taken from the audience if there's anyone. Is there anyone that has any comments on this particular issue? No. Well, we're going to have many hearings about it going forward, so don't feel the need at this point. So, okay. Anything that anybody wants to add at this point, or we'll just carry it? Gene, so Gene and I have been looking over and trying to start a draft of a bylaw. So I think maybe we meet again and based on this
Yep.
feedback and try to refine things.
Yeah, the next meeting's not till November 12th, so we have time to take into consideration what's discussed today, revise a draft, and I would anticipate you're going to have this on your agenda all the way from now to public hearing starting.
And I would just say if people can start thinking about what are the things that we really want to kind of focus on, and not the things that we're necessarily like worried or scared about, because I do agree that I don't think these are just going to start popping up willy-nilly. It's not going to be a lot, but I think where we can restrict, we should discuss and think about it and decide. And I really think I don't know, again, like I said, I think adding ADUs to multifamilies, I really don't think that was the intent of the law. And I think if we stick to what the law intended, which was smaller units attached to single-family houses, then we'll come up with some good results and limit any kind of really significantly bad results. That's just my thought. But okay, so we will continue that until you say November 12th is our next meeting? Wow. All right.
Because of the election is November 5th, so you move to the second Tuesday.
No 29th, because we already had a meeting this month.
You
Got
had
it.
to.
Okay, all right, okay, all right. Next on the agenda, continued public hearings. So 1250 Osgood Street, that's continued until November 12th. We will do 335 Salem Street, JCE Property Development. Application, yes?
Continuance came in late on that, but they also requested
Oh.
continuance to November 26th, and that's because the ZBA did not have a quorum for their hearing,
Ah,
and they had to continue to the November 19th ZBA meeting.
okay, so for anyone interested, 335 Salem Street is still at the ZBA, so we don't have anything that we can act on one way or the other because there's no actual project before us yet. So they're continued until when at the ZBA?
The 19th of November?
Okay, so
Their
we're,
next meeting is November 26th.
okay, so that'll be continued until November
I
26th.
revised the agenda and posted it with that continuance, I just didn't resend it to the board.
All right, okay, and I didn't look at that. Okay, thank you, Gene. Well, cool, that's one thing that less we have to do. Great Pond Road, across from 1936 Great Pond Road, Jamie Villette Environmental Partners on behalf of the town of North Andover. Application for a watershed special permit under Article 4, Part 5, 195-4, 19C, and Article 10, 195-10.7 of the town of North Andover zoning bylaw. Applicant proposes site improvements, including demolition of the existing bituminous, I love that word, concrete boat launch, retaining wall, and gravel parking area. The work includes construction of a new hand-carry boat launch, mechanically stabilized earth block wall, permeable paver parking areas, and driveways, 2 bioretention areas, and tree planting. The property is located in the R1 zoning district. Gene, want to tell us what we got going on with this one, please?
Yep, so the stormwater peer review is complete, and recommended conditions have been incorporated into the draft decision. At the last meeting, the only outstanding item was that the applicant was free to reach out to the manufacturer and confirm what warranty exists. And today, I added to the meeting packet a warranty for both the sleeve that goes over the bollard and the bollard itself. And so those were emailed to you and included in the meeting packet.
Okay. Any board member questions or comments? Applicant, anything else you wish to add?
Nope, I'm all set.
Okay. Jean, have any questions or comments come in online?
No.
Okay. Are there any members of the public? Do I do that first?
I do have a question for Jean on this.
Okay, let me see if there are public comments first, and then we'll go to that. Any members of the public that wish to make any questions or comments? Sir?
Frank Reganisi, 1939 Great Pond Road. I am directly across the street from the
I recall.
proposed work.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to this, as I said at a previous meeting, I'm not opposed to this. What I am opposed to is the fact that the town does all these things, but then there's no enforcement. And I could cite just a few different things. The other night, 11:23, there was a light shining in my room. There was people fishing out there. And they're not supposed to be out there. There's specific rules. There's rules that the Board of Selectmen have submitted, and they're on file. September 26, 2016. That was a long time ago. Some of these rules don't even apply, and yet, the selectmen say that, we have rules down there governing the enforcement of what goes on across the street. I see what goes on across the street. There are,
Okay. Can I hold it for a second?
I can comment on that.
Okay, that would be great.
That the select board did update lake usage rules, and they do,
When?
I think 2016 was the most recent, and they do say that residents with permits can boat on the lake, less than 15-foot boats, hand-powered only or battery, but not at night. So you're correct, they should not be out there at night. It is not allowed under the lake usage rules approved by the select board. Now, there's also an addendum to those rules, which is part of what's posted online, that were done by the police department long before 2016, that talks about enforcement and fines, but I don't know of any ongoing enforcement. There's rules, but I'm not aware of any enforcement of the rules.
So could we do this? So, hearing your complaints, and they seem very valid, though, as you say, you're in support of the project, and we're voting on the project, right? So enforcement is not our area, nor do we have any real authority. But could we do this? And I'd like to hear the board's thoughts, just something that I was thinking about. Could we, after we vote on this, and if it's approved, write a letter to the select board and say, short letter just said, we've just approved project at Great Pond Road for new work on the boat launch. We're very excited about it. However, during the public hearings, we heard from a resident about enforcement of certain rules, and we just asked that maybe if you could take a look at this once this project is, while this project is being worked on, could you just take a look at the rules, and do they need any updates, and something along those lines? Do you think that would be
No, I think it's an
appropriate?
excellent idea. And I mean, this type of situation is not the first time it's come up. This is maybe a little bit more extreme example, but I think a consistent policy of doing what you recommend is an excellent idea.
I think it's a good idea because part of renovating that site, and it's not just the boat launch, I mean, the
Right, the
stone
whole
wall
site,
is
yeah.
falling, it's dangerous. It's going to lead to more use, that's kind of the intent.
Right, it's
And
the
so, enforcement, especially early on to set the standard, is probably a really good idea. And it's coming to our attention. We don't have purview over it, but I think it's a great idea to advise the select.
I think that's a good hook too, to say, you know, it's gonna be, the whole idea of this is that there will be more use of this great resource that we have, and we look forward to that, but understanding that there are rules in place that, you know, were being reported to us at least as not being followed. We'd
As not being enforced.
Yes.
Followed and enforced.
Yes.
Okay.
But I do think, like, when we write the letter to the select board, I think we should copy the police department as the enforcement agency for these rules, right?
We can copy the police department and the town manager.
Who is supposed to enforce anything?
I believe it's the police department?
Yes.
Police department.
Then
And,
it says in these restrictions that, you know, tickets are supposed to be given out. I would venture to say that not one ticket has ever been given out.
I honestly, I have no idea. I know, I can say that I very much respect the work that the police department does, and they have a lot of it. So I don't know, but I know that this is important too. So, and to the extent that we can, that's kind of what I'm proposing that our board do to try to help out. But certainly if you need any other contact information for other people, I'm happy to provide that, but that's what we can do.
I kind of see what goes on because I live directly
Right.
across the street.
I'm sure.
And it's not fair to the people that abide by the rules. And on a weekend, it's very, very busy there. A lot of people come in. I've seen New Hampshire plates park in there. And it doesn't seem fair, like I said, to the people that abide the rules. And I was kind of hoping that, you know, maybe this board could put in an amendment or somehow,
We don't have the authority to do that.
you know.
No.
Well,
So
maybe a letter to the Board of Selectmen
that's,
would.
I think we have the authority and I think, the ability to do based on your comments and based on what we're doing. So that, I'd be happy to do.
And I think we could give a couple examples. One is boating at night,
Yep.
which violates the rules. And the second is potentially non-resident use of the lake. And that's kind of a big rule, which is tied to the fact that it's our sole drinking water supply. So those are two good examples that we could use based on what we've heard tonight.
I do have one quick, I'm not sure if you know, so I don't find the signage down there very great about what the rules are and what can and can't be done. Like, I was going out on my kayak and I saw people going out on stand-up paddle boards, right? Which isn't allowed.
Right. Correct.
They weren't from town.
Correct.
And using stand-up paddle boards.
Correct.
But I didn't really see anything, I know that that's not allowed, but I didn't really see anything
So-
that clearly said that.
So
It's,
just to give you a contrast, if you go to the parking lot by the Edgewood Retirement Home for Half Mile Hill,
yeah.
there's a board there with really nice laying out, here are the rules for this, you know, please follow, thank you very much. And also for the trustees Wire Hill, but that's not town, that's trustees. But Half Mile Hill, there isn't something equivalent to the boat launch sites. I can tell you it's been discussed in the past, it hasn't been done, I'm gonna leave it there. I think that adding this to the letter to the select board, that would be a third thing, posting of guidelines and regulations by not only this boat rack site, but the one in the hatch as well would be a good idea.
Enforcement, rules and regs.
That'd be under
Signs.
DPW, right, to post that sign?
I think we'll leave that to the select board.
Would you,
So,
it's not, there's nothing that we can condition signage, right? Not for that, I didn't think so.
The North Pump Station does propose a kiosk with the glass panel. The rules and regs are going to be posted there. They should be there now. I don't know that they are or not. I believe they're at Ray's Pump Station, but we don't have any signage at the Pleasant Street or the Hatch.
Right. All right, so enforcement, rules and regs. and-
boating at night and observing potential non-resident use. And then you could add another one. You have seen stand-up paddle boards, which are not allowed.
Yeah, okay. All right, so if it's okay with the board, maybe I'll do a draft and I'll
Great.
have you review it.
I'm happy to look at it.
And then but I'm gonna bring it back to the board before we send it just for
Great.
approval.
Thanks
Okay.
for taking the time to talk to us.
No problem. Thank you
Okay.
for anything you do that would be a help.
Yep.
Okay, any other public comment? All right, can we get a
I had a
Peter, yes, sorry. Go ahead.
So, part of what we're reviewing is, the design of what's going in there. And an important part of the design, which we had a follow-up on with the warranty, are these locking bollards. I would like to see something in this decision somewhere, properly worded, that refers to the fact that the locking bollards are, a critical part of the design. The purpose of those is to prevent motorized boats other than fire rescue. And the locking bollards are to be kept locked by the fire department. And we should put that in here. I'm mainly thinking so that, after we're gone, somebody says, what the heck, why do we have to bother with these locking bollards? Well, let's look, maybe there's something in the planning board decision.
Okay.
Can we
So,
craft that in a proper fashion so that, again, it's mainly to have as a record?
so it seems like there are two parts to that. One is a finding of fact that there will be locking bollards to prevent motorized boats from entering the lake as they are not allowed,
Other than fire rescue.
Okay. All right, so Gina, finding of fact that locking bollards are being placed at the entryway to the boat ramp,
At the boat ramp, yes.
at the boat ramp, to prevent motorized boats other than fire rescue from entering the lake.
Correct.
That's a finding of fact, right?
Yep.
And then a condition, a special condition, that locking bollards will be maintained by the fire department to prevent motorized boats other than for fire and rescue from entering the lake.
Correct.
And when we say motorized boats, we're not capturing something too large like the electric boats that Philip, that Brooks is eventually going to have if you have your way, right?
Right.
We're not, it's not overbroad.
No.
Okay.
I mean, you could say internal combustion motorized boats, but I don't think that's
You don't think it's
necessary.
necessary.
But if somebody say, well, is electric boat motorized? Maybe we should say internal combustion motorized boats. That would be more precise.
Well, no, because isn't part of your issue size?
Why don't we just leave it as motorized boats,
Okay,
and if
fine.
someone
Yeah,
has a problem, they
yeah.
can come and talk to us
Fine,
about it,
fine.
and we can figure
Fine.
it out.
Fine.
Gene, any issues with that?
So
Any concerns?
you've had discussions with the chief, John Ware,
We have,
and he's agreed.
at the design meetings, Chief Ware specified that these locking bollards would be added to the fire department's monthly check of their lock system around town. And that was the chief's suggestion.
And recently you had that included in minutes, that we
Correct.
discussed that. So I'm just, my concern is compelling another town department in conditioning their performance. And
I see.
If I may add, I believe on the general notes of our design plans, we included language noting the locking bollards and that they were for the key. I think we talked about the key. Peter would, the fire department would
Yes.
be responsible
So
for
can I
the
reference
locking
that note?
mechanisms.
I mean, we can, the condition can, or we can just make the condition that they're locking bollards, and we can have our finding of fact be that it's our understanding that the fire department's going to
Right.
maintain those.
And
then.
I'll reference that note, I agree, there's a note on it about the fire department.
Okay.
As long as the reference is specifying that, based on their comments at the design meetings, the fire department is the entity that will be maintaining those locking bollards.
Yeah.
I
It's
would
a-
double check those notes of how it's worded.
That's,
Yeah.
that's what it should say, because that's what was said in the design meetings.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll amend that finding of
Thank
fact. Yep. Okay. Any other board questions or comments? Nope. Seeing none, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved, okay, yes, second then.
Okay. All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Review the decision. Thank you, sir.
Do we want to make a note here on paragraph 9, per the residents' comments, that no nuisance, serious hazards? Is this referring only to the construction phase or the use that follows? Because for the use that follows, it should be, you know, assuming adequate enforcement, there will be no,
Well, but I think we have to assume that. I mean,
It's a condition of a special permit.
it's a condition of a
approval. You need
special
to have that
permit.
finding.
I don't
No.
think that us making this better will change any of the nuisance that already exists. Doesn't,
I think it will, because by improving the site, you're gonna have more use, and
but you don't know that that won't lead to more enforcement, right? I mean, we don't know.
I mean, I think it's kind of a boilerplate.
it is.
We're doing everyone, because you can make the same argument on literally everything we do, that, you know, you build a new commercial facility that's got more use than it had there before, but we make the stipulation that there's no nuisance.
I do think there's a distinction here, John, but I take your point, and Jean's, it's boilerplate, and it's in all of them. I think there's a distinction here because the risk of providing that ramp for the sake of fire rescue, and that's the only reason there is a trailer-capable ramp, otherwise it would have been just hand carry, that creates the potential for more abuse, nuisance, hazard than other things we normally do. Now, we've already taken 2 steps. One is drafting a letter to the select board, that's great. The second is we're amending this, the fact and the condition, so we've taken some steps already, and maybe my asking to qualify number 9 is a step too far, so, you know, I'm obviously closer to this, given my long history, but
This is
now
what
that I
I'm-
am emeritus status, I'm certainly not gonna push the point.
But also, Peter, it says there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. It
Right.
doesn't say,
It's not a butter.
right.
And
I think we have enough guardrails in this. I
Okay.
mean, I do think there is a broader municipal issue of enforcement just in general of, you know, not criminal enforcement, but more civil enforcement and, you know, maybe if people acted like better neighbors, we'd have a
I
simple
mean, to
problem.
John's point,
but
I think,
that's-
like, for every project where there's more people, you know, it's gonna be more cars, therefore, there's more speeding and traffic, and we deal with that in terms of the traffic counts, but we also can't control how many speeding tickets are given out, or how many parking tickets are given out, and stuff like that. There's only so much we can do.
Part of what's animating me here is that the town's gotten away with not having to have enforcement on the lake, in part because the only trailer-capable boat launch, and you can equate trailer-capable launch with gas engines, because the gas engines are just too heavy to lift those boats without a
Right,
trailer
yeah.
launch. And the only trailer launch in, you know, any recollection of anyone in town, this generation or prior generations, going back that far, was for the town water plant behind a locked gate. Now, it used to be at the old North Pump Station. That was the ramp. And then with the new water treatment plant, the ramp at the old North Pump Station became derelict and couldn't be used by a trailer because it's all beat up. And instead, it was the ramp at the new water treatment plant, which has no public access. It's literally a locked gate for town employees only. Because of that, the town has really not had a need for enforcement. This will change the dynamic, which is what animates me to say this is not really the same as the other things.
I think that's fair. I think the approach would make sense to do it. I'm not even necessarily saying we have to put it in our decision, but there's no reason why we couldn't, a year after this thing is done, do like a review to see if the enforcement is occurring. I mean, you know, why not? I mean, it doesn't feel right like when, you know, some of the other permits, what we've done is we said to look back 6 months or a year or 2 years. I feel like something like that's in order for this, but I wouldn't necessarily put it in the decision. But I think we should do it. I mean, what's the harm in doing it? I mean, because your point's
that's
well
a good
taken,
idea.
and, I mean, because I remember when this thing started, like 3 or 4 years ago, there was a lot of back and forth on that, and I know from the very beginning you were concerned about it, and it evolved,
Well, and as a result, it was hand carry only until the fire chief
Part of-
said,
yeah.
wait a minute, we need a second fire rescue capable ramp.
yeah.
And at that point, hey, if the fire
Yeah.
chief says they need it, then they need it.
So let's stick in our lane with our decision, and then, you know, as individuals who are concerned about the watershed, we can follow
Okay,
up.
good, I like that,
as
I like
needed.
that approach, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
get a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve as amended,
Yes,
to both the finding of fact and condition.
special condition.
Yes, thank you.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Can I get a second motion to draft a letter to the select board with copy to the police department about this new project that we have now permitted and that we're excited about, but also just asking them to take a look at the implications and the enforcement there.
So moved, copy to police department and the town manager.
Town manager, thank you.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Okay, we'll work on that. Okay, thank you. Very helpful, by the way, with the project. The whole presentation was great.
Thank you.
All right. All right, new public hearing. Well, actually, hold on. Who's got the watershed special permit?
135.
Who, is anyone here for that? 135, yeah. I'm not gonna make you wait anymore. I'm gonna make Jeff wait. 135 South Bradford Street. James Zimmer requests for a waiver of watershed special permit to allow for construction of a 14.4 16 by 16.5 kitchen addition and a 14 by 4 and 16 by 5 screen porch in the non-discharge zone of the watershed protection district. The property is located in the R1 residential zoning district. Come on up.
All right, so as you know, there's a provision in the zoning bylaw that allows you to waive a watershed special permit if it will not expand the existing footprint of the structure, will not disturb existing topography, and the proposed structure is on town sewer. And all of that does apply to the site plan. So Hayes Engineering completed the site plan. As you can see, looking at the house from the street to the right, there's a proposed screen porch and a proposed kitchen. They are on bollards. Their distance to the nearest wetland off property is 187 feet. So it's in the non-discharge buffer zone. You can see there's an existing tree line. There's existing proposed erosion control. The steps are 176 feet, but like I said, the main structure, the screen porch, is 187 feet to the wetland. It has a Caltech stormwater device. They are proposing to take the existing house roof as well as the proposed roof and pipe it to the Caltech unit. An operation and maintenance plan is included for the operation of that unit. This is, so the street is out front of the home, this is the rear stairs. As you can see, there's 5 sonotube columns to hold the deck up. The topography does slope to the rear of the house, and it shows here it's not being changed at all. And so it does meet the requirements of a waiver request, and like I said, the O&M plan, I encourage them to have it signed by the owner. It has been submitted.
Gene, can I just ask a question clarifying? You said there were 3 criteria. Could you repeat them again?
Yep, doesn't change the topography. The structure is on town sewer, and it doesn't extend the footprint of the building. And so,
That was the one I didn't understand.
so there's no foundation. I took extending the footprint would be, you'd be excavating and including a foundation.
Okay.
This is just
I
built on
mean,
sonotubes.
it doesn't change the topography and, but it just, yeah, it just seemed like it did change. I mean, the building's bigger, but,
Yeah,
Down
definitely
the
bigger, but built on sonotubes. So the excavation for each of these tubes is pretty minimal.
the other question I had is, okay, the engineer provided a plan, which is good,
Yep.
because effectively what we're doing is, like it or not, it's a mini version of a review of, special permit review.
Yeah, this
But
is,
did anybody on our side look at it just to see if it all fits together and passes muster?
just myself, a building permit's been applied for, but I haven't approved it, so it's just pending your review.
Okay.
I can run it by John Bajasi if you'd like, and
Well, at this point, I was just asking whether he did it or not,
No.
so that's fine.
I would still draft a decision and include the requirement for the fertilizer restriction and pavement restriction, so we'd get the deed restriction as well.
Are you suggesting some kind of engineering
No,
review?
no. What I'm trying to say is, I think this thing fits the criteria for this, but we don't want it to be so elastic that, people can come down the road and say, you approve this one, and it seems to meet it, and, again, we want to reasonably ensure that there's not going to be a problem, and between the criteria of the bylaw of what you're allowed to do or not, plus the fact that they had an engineer, the only thing to me that would complete the picture would just to make sure somebody took a quick look at it on our side, and I'm perfectly fine with doing it the way Gene suggested.
Yeah, okay.
So you need to draft a decision anyway?
I would still draft a decision, yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
for the record, yeah.
So if we could do that, and if we could have Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind
Yep.
taking a look at it, just to confirm. I think to your point, John, like, right, this is, 500 square feet, it seems to fit, but what if so, yes, they're not increasing the foundation, but what if they went 1,000 square feet or 1,500, and now we're getting, different pylons and stuff like that to make sure that it's not gonna collapse into something else? Would be good to have someone just take a quick look at it.
Okay.
Anything you wanna add?
Like, just asking the question, who's gonna look at, I mean, are you looking at just the environmental piece of it? What are they looking at? That's what I'm,
I think just
Our town engineer would just look at the plans that your engineer put together, and
this part, the
Yeah,
environmental
yeah.
plans, okay.
Yeah.
That's, because there's building permit plans is also.
no,
so,
no.
Okay, understood,
Yeah.
understood.
Yeah, really just see, is there anything that jumps out that says, whoa, let's
Sure.
be careful there. It looks, from our lay point of view, it looks fine. It looks like everything's kind of protected watershed-wise, so it looks pretty good. So Gene will draft a decision, and at our next meeting, we'll make a decision.
Awesome.
Okay?
Thank you all.
Gene, if you have any questions, reach out to them and let us know. Okay, great.
Kathy Dawson says hello.
Oh.
She's my neighbor, across the street.
Very good, thank you. Okay, 315 Turnpike Street, Merrimack College, application for limited site plan review under Article 8, Part 3, site plan review, and Article 10, Administration Section 195-10.7 of the North Andover zoning bylaw. Applicant proposing construction of a 19,200 gross square foot, two-story building situated along Ahern Road, oriented in line with Sullivan Hall. The project will include utility infrastructure, stormwater management plan, and associated landscape. Site is located within the residential 3 zoning district. Hi. You guys just love coming here. Build, build, build. All right. Gene, what do we got?
Wait a second, please.
She doesn't even know.
All right, so in your packet, there was an abutter letter submitted by J. Gregory Batten. He details an objection to the application. Department review comments have been received by Conservation, Health, and DPW Operations. No concerns were expressed. As with the previous athletic complex permitting, so some of the board members were there when they did the whole Dwayne Stadium. The drainage for the proposed development site flows to the town of Andover. The peer review is being administered through Andover as part of the Stormwater Bank. The review materials have been forwarded to Horsley Witten Group, so they use our same peer reviewer. And all comments and responses will be shared with both boards. The applicant has filed a notice of intent with the Andover Conservation Commission to extend the Stormwater Management Bank established under the original order of conditions and went before the commission this past Tuesday to introduce the project and initiate the stormwater peer review. So, turn it over to Jeff.
Excellent. Well, I'll open it up here. I've met almost all of you on the board. My name is Anthony Preston. I'm the Associate Vice President of Government, External Affairs, and Institutional Projects. So a lot of what Jeff did and what Felipe did is kind of bleeding over into my world, and I've kind of taken over of a lot of what they do on the external end and institutional project end. So we're really excited to be here tonight. I appreciate you all taking the time to hear about the proposed lecture hall. We're really excited about it and what it's going to do for the campus and the student body academically and in their experience. So I think we'll begin just quickly giving you a brief overview of who the team is. So Gene, if you want to just run to the next slide. So obviously Merrimack College is the owner of the project. Trident, Mark LaHoulier, who is behind me to the left. He is, Trident is going to be our project manager, while Procron is going to be the architect and construction manager. We brought on Mark Johnson to help us as legal counsel. And Jeff, as you all know very well, is with VHB, and they are our civil engineer and landscape architect. So we'll just pause on this slide really quickly while I give you the high-level scope of the project, the impetus of the project, and what we are looking to get out of it as an institution here. So the building is proposed as 2 floors with 5 lecture hall, lecture-style classrooms, 2 on the first floor and 3 on the second floor. There will be no offices in this building. It is purely just a lecture hall building. So unlike Crow and unlike Sullivan, unlike Cushing and all of the other academic buildings that we have, this one won't have any office space in it. So it'll just be used during the day and into the early evening for classes. Right now, we are looking at the academic core of the campus, this parcel here. To the left of it is what we consider the academic core of the campus, and that is, you can see Sullivan Hall in the middle, yep, right there where the cursor is. To the left of that is where the lecture hall is proposed to be. So it was really important to us to have the lecture hall be a part of this, what I keep referring to as the academic core, which is really that area you're looking at right now where it's Sullivan, it's Cushing, there's the McQuaid Library, there's Palmisano Hall, and there's O'Reilly. That is all kind of more towards the 114 side of campus. So this is in addition to that academic core specifically. I want to talk a little bit about why we're doing this project. Merrimack is doing really well now, and we're really fortunate for that. And as you guys may know, we are looking to pivot more towards a research institution. We want to be, in the next 5 to 10 years, a Carnegie R2 institution. So we need to bolster our research here on campus, and that's one of our number one prerogatives on campus right now. With that, we need to attract new talent, primarily on our faculty end, who can do research but can also teach in the classroom. So they can do half and half. But with that comes expectations from those faculty, and what they're used to are larger class sizes. So this lecture hall is to help get us moving towards that. We've known now that we do need additional classroom space, so this is going to help alleviate that issue as well. So, you know, we're really hoping and really aiming that this lecture hall is going to propel us into the next academic atmos, for lack of better terms. So we're here today to run you guys through the proposal, and we have Jeff here to bring us through all the technical ends of it, and happy to answer any questions you have.
Can I ask a question? Go to Peter. So, all of what you're saying makes great sense, and this is more just a comment, and I'm sure you guys talk about it, but I joking with Jeff, you guys are coming up about that you guys are here a lot and building, and you're building, and I would just say that one of the kind of drawing points, I would say, especially for, I'm talking to someone who's, my oldest is going to start be looking at, college tours and stuff like that, of a suburban college town campus, is green space as well. So just as you're doing all of these things, I would just, it seems like with each building coming up, your green space is kind of shrinking and shrinking. So just, I would just recommend being cognizant of that in the plans. I know there's a lot to fit into kind of a smaller space, but just to be aware of that it not only from a planning perspective is it good, also it absorbs rain and stormwater and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
from the college experience, I mean, I went to college in the city. I didn't expect to see grass. Like when we saw grass, we're like, wow,
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you're coming out to a college like this, in the suburbs, you do expect to see it. And I think it's a good part of the experience for college students. So I just wanted to say that. Just,
No, well said, absolutely.
Peter, sorry.
So, your presentation sort of premised part of what we're seeing on Merrimack's Carnegie R2 goal. So I just spent over a decade at Northeastern, so I think I am
Yep.
on the research side.
Yep.
I think I understand the goal, and, good for you. But then you described this project as lecture hall, no offices, no labs. Explain to me how that, I understand how the lecture hall ties, university has two products, education and research, so I understand how the lecture hall relates to the education and teaching. But since you seem to premise this in part on the Carnegie R2 goal,
Yep.
How does the lecture hall alone tie into the research goals?
Yeah, no, that absolutely great question. I think what it comes down to is just sheer space on campus, interior to our buildings. The more research faculty that we hire, the more that we need to outfit and equip space for them to actually do their research. I think a good example of this is across the street at 510. We have Department of Homeland Security funded research, and we just had to equip an entire federally secure space for that research to actually be done. And that has taken up just about a fourth of that entire floor. So there can be no teaching, there can be no office space in there. It is literally used just for research. I think another good example is in Palmisano Hall. The first half of the first floor, that entire first floor used to be classroom. When I went there, I'm an alum of Merrimack. I studied biology there, so I was in Palmisano all the time because it was Mendel at the time, but now it's Palmisano. That first floor was primarily classroom space. Almost all of it was. When we put in the shared instrumentation research facility, it wiped out half of the classroom space on that first floor. So the more and more that we delve into these research-funded spaces with research faculty, the more capital they're actually going to need on campus. And with that, again, it just comes down to sheer space. We're going to have to eat into some of the smaller classrooms that we already have in order to outfit those research areas. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Two other quick questions.
Yeah.
I don't know if Jeff's going to get into this, but are you going to be able tonight to give us a sense of sort of percentage increase or decrease in stormwater that will end up coming down to Andover, to the neighborhoods that have come before this board and expressed deep concern? Are you going to get into that?
Yes.
And I'll be very interested in the delta from today to final condition. And then lastly, I'm really glad that you talked about the Carnegie R2 goal for Merrimack. And again, I congratulate you on having the goal. Is Merrimack going to talk to the board tonight or at some point to say, as part of the Carnegie R2 goal, here's the future construction that we haven't talked to you about yet, and perhaps you're not ready to talk to us about it in any detail, but to say, as part of a strategic plan, here's what we anticipate in the years ahead. Is that something that Merrimack could do for the board, is to give us some type of, and probably not tonight, but some type of a high-level strategic plan roadmap for Carnegie R2 related future construction aspirations?
yeah, no, that's another great question. We're not prepared to do that tonight.
Right.
We have our agenda for the future, which is online. It's 2021 through 2026. That is our roadmap from those specific years on where we exactly want to get to. Obviously, that's going to be done over after 2026 comes, right? We're going to be taking the next X amount of time to recreate what the next agenda for XYZ is. And R2 and the Carnegie classification is going to be a major part of that. Can I promise that I can stand up here and say, these are the buildings that we expect to build, or this is the expansion we want to do here and there? I can't sit here and promise that because it fluctuates.
Right.
But we can tell you directionally where
So,
we want to go.
I wouldn't want semantics to limit the opportunity to collaborate with the board
Yeah,
as you are envisioning how to get to the goals at a strategic level. So I am not asking for you to tell us, you know, how many square feet in what building for what purpose, but instead at another session, but perhaps not too far in the future, to say, in order to achieve Merrimack's goals and the next strategic plan, here is how we're thinking of the campus in ways that may end up before the planning board at some point in the future, even if it's visionary versus specifics. But I would encourage that type of future meeting.
Well, so I like the idea, but I think for me, I would say, and you being relatively kind of newer, that there are so many, all right, so this is going way outside where we're about to go, but I'm just gonna say it anyway. There's so many missed opportunities over the last 10 to 15 years between Merrimack and the town to strategize and to come up with ways to be mutually helpful to each other. So if you're coming up with this new ideas about their new direction, a greater direction for the school in terms of research and things like that, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to, at some point, when you guys have your plans a little bit more set, to the town manager, to the superintendent, to share those goals, because how you build could be kind of merged with how the town can help you and how you can help the town. So for instance, if you're going to build a new lab, could there be something put in where, you know, we have high school students that go in and to take classes and do things at Merrimack, and are there certain things that you have to put in that might be different if you're going to accommodate that. Are there things that you could talk to the town about, the water supply and things like that, to make sure you're talking with DPW about pipe sizes
Yeah.
and things like that, to do that ahead of time? So the more you can share the strategy, I think the better the opportunity for these collaborative approaches, that once you get too far going one direction and once the town gets too far going to
Yep.
get another direction, it's hard to come together to collaborate. But if you do it early enough on, I just think with a college town, I used to work in Beverly, and colleges and the town, it's not always perfect, but there was a lot of discussions, at least with between the town and Endicott and the town and the Montserrat, about things that they were happening as they were building or before they were building, just to say, hey, are there small ways that we can work together to make mutual benefit?
Yeah.
And I think having those conversations before you finalize, okay, this building's going here and this is what we're going to put in it, really can, these small things can be really meaningful, and I just feel like we miss these opportunities a lot.
I love the way you frame this, Eitan, and I just will echo that briefly before we get to the purpose of the meeting, to say that I was born and grew up here, and then moved away for 40 years and came back 10 years ago. And when I grew up here, as a native resident, the way residents looked at Merrimack was very different than when I moved back 40 years later. So I just want to echo Eitan's point that
Yeah.
I think we may have had some missed opportunities, and
Yeah.
in the job that you described, you were in a great position to recapture that town-gown synergy that I remember we used to have. So thank you.
No, that's very well said and very well taken. That's actually exactly why I'm at Merrimack.
Great.
Is to do just that. I've already met and spoken with Melissa and Andrew.
Great.
And we're beginning those processes with Andover as well, with a lot of the companies, the Planning Commission, different organizations
Good.
around, to really figure out how we can align priorities to make sure that whichever direction that we, Merrimack, see ourselves continuing to move in is in alignment with what the town needs. So your point is very well taken, and that is actually exactly why I'm here.
Great.
So,
Great. All right, Jeff, let's get into the specifics.
All right. Good evening, Jeff Ketterts with VHP.
we just call him Jeff now, not
Jeff,
Jeff
yeah.
K, so it's,
Okay.
it's much easier.
I had always, it was
One
always
Jeff.
Jeff 1
Yeah,
and Jeff
this
2.
is one Jeff now. Yeah.
Just one Jeff.
So just a quick rundown here. Again, this is speaking to the main parcel that was highlighted in blue on the previous slide, lot 13 on map 25. But just to highlight the dimensional criteria, the proposed project is in conformance with all the dimensional requirements. We're not seeking any waivers or variances, meeting the setbacks and the building height as shown in the table here. G, next
Can you
slide.
go back 1 second?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So here's a blow-up of the proposed site. Route 114 is at the top of your page there. Just for context, the building setback off of the 114 right-of-way is roughly 160 feet. You can see Sullivan Hall, the existing off to the right, shaded in gray there. The proposed building is about 30 feet off of the edge, the outermost edge of Sullivan Hall, where that vestibule is in the middle.
What's there now, Jeff?
So right now, it's lawn space. There's an existing row of trees. You can see about 5 or 6 of them at the very southern end, bottom end of the plan, as part of the Austin Quad, and there's a existing walkway just south of that. And it's lawn in between there and the parking lot. There's an existing sidewalk just south of the existing parking lot. Austin Hall is off to the left here, but our proposed site, as Gene mentioned, just shy of 20,000 gross square footage, so about a 10,000 square foot footprint, over 2 stories. The priority here was really providing some new pedestrian connections as well, and to start to start to frame the edge of the quad in the green space in the middle. As Anthony mentioned, with this being the academic core, the intent is really to create some gathering spaces just outside the lecture halls that improve the connections from adjacent areas on campus, but give some folks places to gather. There's also associated landscaping, lighting, utilities, stormwater management that we'll go through in the following slides. So just for context, I know we're continuing to be mindful of the 114 improvements, so wanted to include this graphic just for awareness. So the 161 feet is the setback to the right-of-way line. The lighter blue, the 188, is the distance to the existing edge of Turnpike Street. And for this section, the roadway edge is actually being pulled in as part of the proposed corridor improvements by about 4 feet or so. So generally the same, but wanted to share this slide just for context on how the lecture hall fits with the future improvements of 114.
So this project does not include a snapshot of the turn lane?
Correct.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, does this, I'm sorry, I was off as well. Does this note the new buildings,
I'm sorry.
the buildings that are being built right now?
Off to the, yeah, you can
Every-
kind of see them dashed in here.
Okay, and where are we?
We are,
Okay.
yeah,
And when we get to stormwater, are the stormwater improvements that are being put in currently as part of the construction that's going on now being incorporated into the stormwater calculations that are being done for this building?
those are tributary to a different location, so it's a separate system, and we'll pull that up on a map here just to show you where that delineation is.
Okay.
Is there any net change to the parking spaces?
No, so the one thing, I'm glad you said that though, the one thing we do want to highlight, we are converting 2 spaces to accessible units to create some ADA spaces close to both the lecture hall and Sullivan. Currently, that area is striped out. There's a fire hydrant just behind the sidewalk where that access aisle is. So those are standard spaces now. We're proposing to restripe those and sign them for accessible units, but no net change to parking.
Are there EV parking spaces, chargers in these parking spaces?
There
currently,
are
no.
not
We-
currently.
Do you guys have a plan for that? Just
So we've had vendors reach out to us in the past. I suspect you probably drive a EV.
Right. Actually, I do, but it only crossed my mind because I actually got a email from the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission about an upcoming forum about how towns are handling EV and access to EV and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So that actually was why I was thinking about it.
Yeah. We look at it. I would say right now we've had a few vendors that have reached out. I know that there were plans years ago to actually really implement one. I don't know what happened to that, but it's definitely something that we're.
Have you heard any demand for it from the student? I mean, I assume
No,
it's
we
demand
haven't
based.
actually. And I'm just saying from a ballpark, looking around, we don't have too many students with EVs right now. We do have faculty, I would say.
Yeah, maybe more of these
faculty
faculty that are going to be doing
Yeah.
your lecturing and
Yes,
research. That's how you draw them.
We'll plug it into the side of the building.
There you go.
But yes.
Okay. Decided, done. Go ahead.
So we just included some floor plans enlargements here. This is the first floor. So just wanted to include some detailed shots of the proposed interior, really highlighting the size of the lecture hall to Anthony's point. And here's the second floor above with the additional classroom spaces there. These are proposed building elevations. The height listed there, the 32.5 feet, is from the finished floor elevation to the roof. Shy of the 35 requirement, but this is just giving you front, back, and side elevations of the proposed building.
Can
And-
you tell if you come back to that, are you gonna show any more of profile materials and so forth that looks to me that this building's more of a fit for the new stuff than for the old stuff. It's my opinion. I'm not wild about the new stuff, so you can see where I'm coming from. But what are we talking about? The building material is brick, or is it?
So that's exactly what we
Sure.
brought Todd here to talk about, yes.
I could kind of chime in a little
Yeah,
bit.
the high answer, it's a good mix of both.
Yeah, exactly. You know, as we talked about, we're kind of, this is the first time we're building in the inner core of the campus. So on that, we wanted to kind of incorporate some of the existing materials that are already, can be found in Sullivan, Austin, and so forth. So we have a lot of traditional brick, some masonry materials. If you can go forward, there's a couple of renderings that might help.
Yeah, that would be great.
That'll
Thank you.
depict.
Yeah, right towards the end.
They're at the end.
Yeah,
I moved them,
sorry.
actually. Sorry.
Boo, John.
Sneak peek. Sneak peek.
Yeah. So there's kind of two sides to this building. This side being the campus side. A lot of glass, kind of activate and energize the inner campus. The other side, a little more closed off. Still welcoming from the parking side, but again, it's not as open and energized on this side. But again, incorporating masonry, but also introducing some new materials that are more in line with the campus's forward thinking of high tech and moving that direction. So-
Why is that, it looks very different. Why is such a difference between the front and the back?
Well, I think the program really is depicting how these things. The SPAC is obviously that the lecture halls are all backed up against this side of the building. So there's a tiered classroom effect. So we're up, 4 or 5 feet from lecture.
I really like that.
Right.
The other side, not so much.
Well, I mean, to the point though, on that is just.
Yeah, it is elevated, so there's a portion of each of those floors, more towards the bottom, I'd say the bottom third, the bottom fourth, where it can't actually be glass because of the elevation from the different tiered sections of the actual lecture hall. So it's kind of trying to make the nicest of what programmatically the space will be used
I mean,
for.
right, and we're backed up against a parking lot in Route 114. I mean, there's not a lot of great views back here, although we have a lot of glass. There are still views of it.
So,
Well, the glass is facing away from 114.
Right, so, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, again, facing inward to the core that we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier. Why is the buildings here? Why we're taking green space? I think we're just kind of completing the original campus, quad.
Yep, so, so what I'm saying is it looks awesome if you're on the inside, and if you're driving by, it looks kind of crappy. So,
Well, that hurts a little bit.
I
And we have to,
I guess
Feels
we get
kind
out.
of industrial to me.
I just, I mean, again, I'm usually one of the least critical of architecture, but it seems like it could be all brick. The brick, then the broken up, and then the brick again. I don't know. Maybe everyone's a critic. I don't know. Am I the only one?
I feel exactly the same way. A straight brick facade.
Because you got all that brick right up next to it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry. Maybe it's a late hour. I'm sorry.
I wanted to ask one thing that fits into the design is that road on the side, that's new, isn't it? Is the road there already?
If you're looking at this picture on the left,
Like, or on the side of the building, is that new?
that's currently there. That's currently part. It's actually almost exactly as it looks right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, it is exactly.
Can you go back to that drawing that Eitan loves?
Just look at it's going to show John the road.
Yep.
As it exists. So it's right here, Medina Drive.
So I just wanted to chime in. It's a striking difference
That's what I was
between
gonna
the
say. It's
quad side
striking.
and the 114 side. And the quad side is fantastic and high-tech and all of that. I'm trying to figure out what it is here that's striking me
There's something, right?
so badly. And with apologies,
Oh, I'm just joking. I understand.
the
It's
fact
part of
that,
the- comes with
that I'm an
the job.
amateur, you can take it with a huge grain of salt, but I think I know what it is that's really bothering me.
All right, what is
You've
that?
got 4 different materials, not including the thing on the roof blocking all the equipment.
Right.
But it's that second floor material with the vertical lines that's to me what is really throwing me, that it's like one of those, what do you call the temporary classrooms that a school
Like
will
the
put?
modular?
A modular
Yeah.
classroom. It's like it's a modular classroom stuck on top there. And that's the thing that's really throwing me. I'm actually okay with a mix of the brick on each end with the first floor, what looks like masonry.
It is masonry. It's
But
just a
man,
different style.
that temporary classroom on the second floor is just not doing it. And, although we admire what you're doing on the quad side, from our perspective, the Route 114 side is pretty important because
Yeah.
we're losing the, North Andover, country town, green space, small town, college campus with Carnegie R2 high tech, which is great. But
I
but
understand.
but this look is weirdly important to us because this is what we see.
And can I say
Understood.
and one other thing is, again, going back to your drawing, so 2 things. I think the inside look is fantastic, and so maybe that's one of the reasons I'm more critical of the outside look, because I really do love the inside look. But have you thought about switching it around? Because I think driving by and seeing it on the outside, it's so,
Well, yeah,
it makes you like want to draw in.
It's
to
just
it.
the opposite, really. I mean, we're trying to activate the campus, not necessarily
Right.
the highway.
No,
Understanding what
I
you're-
think
You've achieved that.
yeah, you
Just, I think some important context
Yeah.
here is understanding the buildings that are around it and where a lot of the student foot traffic is.
yeah.
That area does not have the most attractive buildings. They're tired, they're old. I mean, they're some of the original buildings of the campus. Sullivan, Cushing, and McQuaid, right? So trying to activate that inner core where the most foot traffic is important to us. And that is, having the main entrance of that building, like the other buildings that are in that area, be focused more towards that center
That makes sense.
is the reasoning for why it is situated as is.
Yeah.
So those are your interests, which they should be.
I
Our
totally get it.
interest is what we see,
I totally get
people
it.
coming
I mean,
in to our town.
You realize you're on just the very beginning with the new building. People in North Andover are going to go berserk when they see those buildings done. I don't know if you realize the backlash that's going to exist where you're building those dorms. There's going to be a lot of backlash. And I think you got to just be a little, I think we're gently trying to tell you to be a little bit more mindful of the sensibility.
No, I appreciate that. I do.
Yeah.
I do.
And right, it's not just the.
They're going to forget about this one. It's going to be great.
I assume this is going to be built after those, or is it the same
So
time?
this is actually going to
Or
be,
gonna be built first?
opened. Yeah, it'll be built first and opened January of 2026.
Okay.
So,
With it's a very simple
Simple,
footprint
yeah.
on both levels.
is there any other illuminated Merrimack College signs on 114? Or would this be the only one?
Illuminated.
Yeah, so you'll go back, go forward
Where was,
one.
there was a.
There's a nighttime rendering. No, go one more, I think.
Was that it?
You're on the other side.
No, go one more forward, Gene. See that sign? So that's from
So-
Ward 14.
Yeah, we have right now actually at the corner development where if you guys are driving by 114, we had or there actually is still right there. The big Merrimack College sign. It's not illuminated, but there are lights that kind of poke out and go down at the sign so you can see it. That's the only other one that I can think of. That's going to be relocated to the Route 114 entrance as the development on the corner is being put together. But other than that, no.
And I would kind of add on to that. They're just kind of contextual, signage for now. The college, at some point, a lot of will at the last moment come up with a donor they'll name the building as, Palmisano, Arcidi, and then come up with a name, and we'll do some sort of graphics that
Yeah,
would,
yeah.
for the building.
Yeah,
But
that's a little
Have you
more
looked
involved.
at how
Yeah.
this view, I'm thinking of the view of the campus from outside the campus, how this exterior 114 facing architecture and style fits or not with the style of the new outward 114 facing dorm buildings that you're also building. Have you looked at them together?
Yeah, and that's kind of why I think from a material standpoint of the actual building, where we have the brick, where we have the, what was the term used?
Temporary
classroom,
classrooms,
is
yeah.
trying to bring together the brick and the new corner development.
Well, you've got our feedback, and
Yeah,
No,
I get the,
A lot of it's
so I
good.
think I get the idea, you're like, okay, trying to match this and
It's
this
trying
and
to
this.
bridge.
So you guys can build it in terms of, really, we have in our limited site plan, I don't think how it looks is really, we don't have that much purview, but I'm just saying, I would say make it one material there. I think you tried to do, I think in this, you're trying to actually please too many people.
Okay.
Because I think the inside is designed for how we want to make it look inside the campus and how, for our students, right? And I think you got that, from our perspective, you got that right. I think this is trying to match that, like that brick matches that, and this matches this, and this matches this. I think you're trying to please too many masters. In my, again, lay opinion, I would make it all one type of thing. But, again, not really we just spent way too much time on it, but that's
Yep.
okay. Okay, let's go
sorry,
back.
Jeff.
Nope.
thank you.
All right.
And I'm usually like, oh, whatever. I'm just always like back on those usually, but.
Back to some exciting numbers here. So this is just following up on the building elevations. I know we mentioned the 32 and a half, that was slab to the roof. Taking the average grade in, we're looking at roughly 33 feet based on the town's building height calc. So this is just documenting that perimeter grade in our average calculation. Again, on the parking, the highlights here is the improvements to accessible parking, creating those two ADA spaces out of standard spaces, circulation connecting some of the adjacent walkways, and no impacts to the current parking layout as well. So no changes to total parking spaces.
Can this is a parenthetical, but just getting back to the theme of long-term needs and requirements related to parking. I don't know whether the opportunity is completely lost, but you gotta have a parking garage on campus.
So
I mean,
I'm happy to address that, because it is a hot topic every week. We have
Yeah.
pizza with the president coming up with our students, and we know that that's going to be a number one topic.
fair enough. I mean, it's just, I look at it every other place that I've seen at college campuses.
Yeah.
They discreetly
Yeah.
put the parking garages and it opens
Yeah.
up so much
The,
space. So,
the
yeah.
main issue with that is how much we would have to charge per student to actually park,
Yeah.
to actually make it affordable to do so.
Fair enough,
It's so
yeah.
expensive. It's like $25,000 a spot.
Yeah.
So in order, we have to charge, $3,000-4,000 a year for parking just to make that work. And we piloted a VIP parking area for students at a hefty price of $2,200, and we only got 35 to 40 students to actually do it. So it's just, we are trying to make it feasible. It's tough. That's why we're at Andover Landing. We got the shuttle system.
If it helps, we can put you first at the meeting, so you guys don't have to pay VHB and your attorneys as much. All right, let's keep going.
So here's a landscape rendering of the site. Again, you can see kind of the existing Medina Drive off to the left there, Ahern Road in front of the new site, and the parking on the top. Along the south side, I think it kind of highlights the size of the row of existing trees to be maintained along the quad side there. Those 5 larger trees highlighted, as well as the 2 between the building and Medina Drive off to the left. So some significant existing vegetation that we are working around because we want to preserve it pretty significantly. Site lighting standpoint, so this is a lot of continuing the campus standard, same fixtures, light bollards, and the campus standard poles. Again, running photometrics to make sure that the new pedestrian areas are all safely lit appropriately. And into stormwater. This project site here it's similar to the corner approach. This is a site-specific stormwater design. So as Gene mentioned, we are currently in front of the Andover Conservation Commission as part of the stormwater bank. That is solely because this project site is within the watershed of the stormwater plan, but we're not proposing an increase of any stormwater runoff peak rates or volumes. So it's more of an accounting exercise that we are going through that process. As opposed to the corner development, we'll get to that later, but that was outside of the watershed, which is why it did not go through Andover. So currently there's just shy of 15 CFS left in the stormwater bank that was established back in 2000, 2001. We're not proposing to use any of that. This site is tributary to the Elm Street Basin. But as shown in green on the plan here, the approach is to collect the drainage from the site and the building, and we're going to be using where that green rectangle is. Those are large subsurface precast concrete galleys. They're open bottom chambers that will give the water a chance to infiltrate. We actually found some pretty amenable soil and groundwater conditions where we could take the opportunity to recharge a lot of it back into the ground. So the intent is to manage that on site, and then there's just a overflow pipe off to the left there to tie back into the closed drainage system. So that will still flow eventually down to the Elm Street Basin, but we're treating and infiltrating the increase in runoff on site, so we're not going to be increasing any further. As Gene mentioned, we are going through a stormwater peer review, so Horsley Witten will be going through the calcs and the plans and the design just to make sure that it is in conformance, but we are in compliance with the Mass DEP stormwater requirements as well as both North Andover requirements. So just a quick kind of update. I won't spend too much time on this, but where we left off with the stormwater management plan, Gene mentioned we are filing to extend it. I just want to clarify that we're solely extending the duration of it. We're not extending the amount of the bank or the amount of mitigation we're able to use. That's strictly tied to the volumes that were constructed in the basins 20 plus years ago. It is just a matter of the order of conditions, the timing of it expiring, so we're extending that to continue to preserve the 14.63 CFS that are remaining between the two detention basins. Regardless, the project will be fully compliant with the current regulatory requirements at both local, state, federal levels. Will be meeting the performance standards applicable.
Do those current performance standards that you're citing and complying with, do they take into account increased severity of storms and rainfall?
So we are using the current, a good example is the original master plan that was done identified certain rainfall volumes as of 1999 for various storm events. Those are continually updated, and we use the most recent Atlas 14 from NOAA for those rainfall events as part of that analysis.
Will this system accommodate the type of rainfall event we had, I guess, a couple of years ago, 6 or 7 inches in one day?
So the closed drainage system is typically not designed to accommodate that, and it's really just, that's not just this project site, that's that's the drainage system everywhere. It's typically designed for the 25-year storm, which is more of a 5-inch rainfall. But what we are looking at in each of these conditions is what happens to that water in these 100-year events and these severe events, and where would that ponding occur. So we're ensuring that we're not going to increase flooding in anywhere downstream, but that doesn't, it's not necessarily all being contained in the drainage system, just because the infrastructure, you know, across the state, across the town, just can't accommodate that severity. But we do want to make sure we're being mindful of where that water is going in those extreme cases.
So where would the ponding occur in this project in that type of extreme case?
So in this case, there's some low-lying areas in the landscape areas there. You can kind of see just to the south, yeah, where that cursor is, one there and one to the left, where the other, where those two inlets are, those are kind of the low points of this system. So if that chamber was, the pipes were backing up, that would be the relief point where it would start to pond.
So is it correct for me to say that the landscaping plan provides ponding areas to contain overflow of stormwater beyond the capacity of the system on site of this project?
Yeah, it's not a significant storage, but it is the relief point for that. Yes.
Are any projects, Jeff, do you know, really being designed for the 100-year storm?
So I'd say they're being designed as far as improving what's happening, the condition now. That's a requirement. They're typically not, the piping systems typically aren't designed to accommodate it. But I would say, regardless, we do have to look at, and we are looking at the 100-year storm and identifying at least, like we said, where that ponding occurs. Typically, I think things are gradually progressing that way, but it's just a matter of, ultimately, we're still restricted by some downstream infrastructure at some point in those extreme events. And the issue is really, it's not even how much the overall rainfall is, how quickly these storms are happening now. And, it might be the same amount of rain that you project over a 24-hour period, but like last August, we know that we experienced that in about 2 hours, and that was really what.
So will the stormwater system for this project, in an extreme event, overflows that exceed the local ponding capacity, does this site have potential in an extreme event to contribute to excess flooding going down 114 past Waverly and into the Market Basket Plaza?
No, not in that direction. This would not be tributary there. And I would say it is no worse than, it would be no worse than it is now.
Well, that was good. That was gonna be my question. What would happen now?
Yeah.
In a 100-year storm event?
It would be less of an impact with this project than there is currently.
Right, so I think that's the issue.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's
why I'm asking.
No, and then my follow-up was exactly to your point, is what would happen now?
So yeah, hopefully, I think this graph or image gives a good visual. This is just a quick primer on the original stormwater plan back in 1999, and the blue was the watershed of majority of the campus that was tributary to the Andover drainage system that's highlighted in yellow there. You can kind of see the green arrows are documenting where these various flows are. The pink area was the one portion of the campus just outside of the stormwater management plan. You can kind of see it circumventing around the red area where the detention basin is. So this was the 25 years ago conditions before the basins were constructed. And then if we flip to the next slide, we can see where we are now. So you see the cyan area significantly reduced, and what this shows is what portions of those watersheds were diverted to the 2 detention basins constructed. The yellow is the football field basin, and the lighter hatch is the tributary area to it, and the red is the Elm Street Basin with that tributary area. Let's notice that one kind of pocket of floating red there, that was diverted to the Elm Street Basin as part of the South Residential Village that was built about 10 years ago, I want to say. So that's the reason why that was pulled out of the blue. That was repiped as part of that project. But our project site here is, again, in the red area, just kind of off the northwest corner of that red space up by Austin Hall where the cursor is. Actually, sorry, Peter, I wanted to make sure I addressed the other thing, just on the site-specific approach for some numbers here, just to give context to how we are changing it. So we evaluate everything for typically 4 storm events, the 2-year, the 10-year, the 25-year, and the 100-year storm events. So for the 2-year storm event, just for some numbers, the existing peak rate of runoff is 1.2 CFS. With the proposed improvements, that'll be reduced to 0.6 CFS. So essentially half of the runoff. And for the smaller storm, we are getting a lot more mitigation because those subsurface systems are intended to really treat the more heavily mitigate the smaller storm events from a water quality standpoint. Going all the way up to the 100-year storm, the peak flow is 5.6 CFS, and the pros conditions, it's reduced to 5.5. So not as much of a change, but still a reduction.
So better than current,
Correct.
including at the 100-year,
Correct.
and half of the current at the modest 2-year.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Utility-wise, this is a blow-up of the utility plan here. Sanitary sewer, which is highlighted in orange. It's a little hard to see off to the right there. We're tying into the existing system between the new building and Sullivan Hall that runs south and then west out eventually to the GLSD. So approximate sewer generations just shy of 1,500 gallons per day. Water system, this is entirely on the North Andover water system, and we'll be connecting some of the interior campus loops, and again, about 1,500 gallons per day of estimated demand just to support the new bathrooms and academic space. Electrical telecommunications services, those will continue to be coordinated with the utility providers. Gas service, including emergency generator off the top right corner of the building. The stormwater management plan we discussed, and actually I want to kind of highlight the proposed utility yard where the transformer and generator are, and those are planned to be in a fully enclosed fence similar to other enclosures on campus and screened accordingly.
And, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask a quick question. Was there any plan to do rooftop solar on the building?
I think a good image is, back to the red. I think a lot of the mechanical space is taking up.
It is. The new stretch code and stuff like that will kind of pushes us to provide some, I believe, hookups and for future capacity of solar. But
Mike.
at this point,
If you want to come to the mic.
sorry. Okay, do you want me to?
Yeah, we need you to.
Yeah, sorry. Hi. At this point, solar is not part of the project, but I believe the new stretch energy code is, we're kind of feeling our way through it as it's brand new to everybody. I believe we have to do some sort of feeds or conduits or provisions for the upgrade to solar at some point down the road, so. But it's not part of the current scope of work.
Good.
And
Right, enough solar-ready roof area, so it's not just a matter of connections, it's, you have to
Well, I'm happy to hear your comments, but I actually would need you to come up if you're going to make comments.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
So it's just a.
Can you just tell us who you are?
My name's Eric Peterson. I'm a resident. I'm actually here about the Edgewood expansion, but I'm
Fantastic.
a contractor. I'm dealing with this myself in
Yep.
residential construction, and the new stretch codes require a certain percentage of solar-ready roof area on any new building, at least in residential work. I'm not entirely sure how it applies, so it is something that needs to be considered in terms of there has to be physical space and the roof has to be designed to be able to take the weight and the wind loads. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good information. Thanks.
And you were saying the screening here, did you say for the generators?
Correct. The generator on the south and then the transformer.
And the
is
transformer,
just
right.
north.
And what provisions do you have for elevation of those in the event of severe flooding?
So they are elevated on concrete pads, but as far as flooding impacts, fortunately, that is the high portion of this site.
Okay, so it's located on the high portion?
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
thank you. Okay.
Here's a good lead-in. So just following up on that, again, speaking to the enclosures, equipment to be screened, and being cognizant of the 114 view there. From a loading standpoint, there is going to be very minimal loading. There's really no, service access or major equipment coming into this building, but there's an existing limited service drive between the new building and Sullivan Hall. That'll be maintained for, limited access to the building. It's mostly hand-wheeled bins for trash. So the red line there just kind of outlines the intent to utilize the existing trash area on the other side of Sullivan Hall, hand-wheeled out, and as well as the utility equipment screening here. So very limited loading requirements for the building. Fire protection, reviewing this with the fire department as well and documenting conformance with NFPA. This is just outlining the emergency access circulation routes. Obviously, as part of the corner project, those improvements are being implemented. So the current access is in up Flaherty in front of Austin Hall, up and around, and either exiting out Walsh Way or looping around the parking lot. With the completion of the Medina Drive improvements on the corner project, that will open up a secondary access route. So we wanted to show both here.
We'll get a sign off from the fire department, I assume. Okay, let's keep going.
This is just a blow up of the same circulation and proximity of hydrants to fire department connections.
As long as you just get the fire department sign off. Okay.
Just some highlights is, prioritizing accessibility and pedestrian circulation, really looking at the Austin Quad and connecting the adjacent areas, as well as the new spaces that this building's creating. As Todd mentioned, will be required to meet the stretch energy code requirements. The building will utilize low-flow plumbing fixtures to help with water usage. From a landscaping standpoint, prioritizing light-colored pavers. All the lighting will be LED and dark sky compliant, as well as native plantings and drip irrigation for the landscaping. And I think we're back to our renderings.
We've been through, you've heard our comments.
So just an update, I think we've kind of covered this all, the department reviews to date. As Gene mentioned, the stormwater peer review is currently underway. And as far as the Andover process today, we appeared before them at the first time on October 1st. That was to introduce the project. At that point, they initiated the peer review, which we've started, and we're currently hoping to work through that process and target a follow-up meeting with Andover Conservation would be November 19th, if we can resolve the peer review process in the meantime.
Okay. And so anticipate coming back to us November 26th? That's our next meeting?
Ideally,
Oh, November 12th, I'm sorry. So do you want to come back on the 12th or the 26th?
I would say we're if we could plan for the 12th.
So we'll put it on for the 12th. If there's, like, if the third-party review isn't done and you
Great.
still need more time, just
Great.
continue it until the
That sounds
26th.
great.
And Gene, just update us if you think it's something that we
Yeah,
can.
we just have to be cognizant of the shot clock too. I think it's 60 days from the application filing, so we may need a continuance.
Okay. We did get a comment that came in online, so I'm going to read that into the record. But first, is there any public comment that in here that anyone wants to make? Seeing none, I'll read this comment that came in so that it's, I mean, it's already part of it. It's submitted as part of the record, so it's already part of the record, but I'll read it anyway. We have a letter from J. Gregory Batten, Law Offices of J. Gregory Batten, 451 Andover Street, Suite 315, North Andover, Massachusetts. RE objection to Merrimack College's application for limited site plan review, project address 3415 Turnpike Street, properly adversely affected, 451 Andover Street, Suite 315. As the owner of real estate located at 451 Andover Street, North Andover, I again hereby object to Merrimack College's application. Merrimack College's application fails for the inter alia some of the following reasons. It violates the Massachusetts Waterways Regulation, Wetlands Protection Act regulation, and Massachusetts Stormwater Management Standards. It fails to promote nature-based solutions to flooding. It fails to build more resilient communities. It fails to integrate the latest science and green infrastructure techniques to mitigate climate change impacts and protect residents, municipalities, and businesses from costly rebuilding efforts. It fails to promote resilience by creating performance standards to protect the natural buffering function of wetlands and floodplains and help prevent damage to both the natural and built environment. If it fails to reduce stormwater pollution to water, it fails to promote a green site design which uses natural solutions like trees and buffer zones to manage stormwater instead of more expensive detention basins and other traditional infrastructure. Sir or Madam, see above. Please make note and make part of the record my objection to Merrimack College's application. Further, I would ask that you deny the application. Your perpetual green lighting of Merrimack College's seemingly endless projects and expansion has allowed for the ruination of a once serene town and community. Thank you. J. Gregory Batten, and Exhibit A is the legal notice. I assume, Gene, that you checked that it meets, the application itself meets our criteria for what's for an application for limited site plan review? Okay, so it, as far as I know, it meets our application standards, and therefore we will decide it based on the merits of our bylaw and the project, but the objection to the application and the request for us to deny that application, and I assume deny the project, has been noted for the record. Okay, anything else that you want to add?
I think we covered just about all of it.
I think we covered, and more. Okay, thank you. You know, take our comments and go with them. We'll do the peer review, and then we'll hopefully see you back on the 12th.
All right.
Thank
Thanks
you
very
for
much.
listening and for
Thank you.
presenting. We appreciate it. I will say, Kate, for the record, our last meeting was 4 minutes long. And
You missed that one.
You missed that one, so everyone blame Kate. We were done at 7:04.
Yep.
I think I got home at 7:25 because Sean and I talked for like 10 minutes afterwards, but we were done at 7:04. I don't think, John, you ever run a 4-minute meeting? I don't know. That might have been a record.
No, yeah, record, that definitely is a record, 4
Yeah.
minutes, that's pretty
It was, we
impressive.
were done at 7:04. It was pretty amazing. Okay. 0 Great Pond Road, Edgewood Retirement Community. Thanks for hanging in there with us. I know it's late, hopefully there's been later, but we appreciate you hanging in. It just happened to be a very busy night. And we will give you as much attention as we have given everybody else. So, but don't feel free to, take as much time as you need. Okay.
I'll just start and then we'll. I'll hand
Well,
it over to
Gene,
Philippe.
why don't you tell us what we're doing here first, and then I'll let you guys go.
Edgewood has requested a discussion item for a conceptual plan. They've been in discussions for some time with Brook School regarding a parcel of land, approximately 33 acres, located across Great Pond Road from Brook School. You, again, some of the board members may remember.
Yeah, why don't you, can you just tell us a little bit about what Edgewood is, and then also about the zoning change we made that would potentially affect this?
So Edgewood is a retirement community. They're currently located at 575 Osgood Street. They've been there since, I believe, the late 90s, and have grown that parcel to what's allowed in terms of density at this point. So for some time, they've been looking for additional land. Once they came upon this parcel, they did some diligence to review the bylaw and make sure that it allows for a satellite location. So that we did tweak the bylaw. I would say it was more of a clarification update that would allow for a phase 2 within the town, but would need to be serviced by a nursing home type facility, have an affiliation with that in the town of North Andover. And so I think we closed what were concerned loopholes in the bylaw, and I think that was 2 years ago now. So conversations have continued with Brooks, and they're here to present a conceptual plan.
Fantastic. Okay, go ahead, sir.
So, Bob Capola, Edgewood Retirement Community, good to see everybody. Thanks for hanging in for us until 9:30, and we're going to turn this over to Philippe Saad, who is a principal with DeMille Schaefer, and he does have some additional folks behind us if there's any questions that we need to draw them in to answer.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob. You did the introduction for me. Thank you very much. I'll be as quick as I can. I know it's late for everybody, but I thank you all for being here today and listening to this informational discussion that we have for you all. The highlighted area here in the oval is the current site. The Brooks School is on the left-hand side, right there. Excuse me. If we can go to next. This is a situation map that puts Edgewood Life Care Community in relationship to the new site across from the pond. And if we go to the next one. This is just also a contextual map to give everybody where the site sits as it relates to the watershed district of North Andover. So the southern western edge of the site is falls within the watershed district of the town.
Great Pond Road?
Right here, exactly.
This property boundary
Yeah.
abuts Great Pond Road. So this Brooks School is located across the street.
How far on Great Pine, if you're going up Great Pine, no, go the other way, to where the road bends?
Right
you
there.
know.
Exactly,
This
right
is the
there.
Y.
What's that?
This is where the cursor is the Y. So Pond Street continues in
Yeah,
Rochester.
Punch, okay.
That's
So
there.
it goes all, okay.
And this is that hairpin,
Yeah.
kind of bend.
And that's where.
John,
where-
isn't this where the solar panels were
Yeah.
going to be put?
Yeah.
It's a little further down.
No, it's the same
Or is it the
spot.
same spot?
Same spot.
Same spot, okay.
It was never constructed, but same.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
So about, what was that, about 6 years ago? 5,
It's a
6
little
years ago?
longer than that.
No, I was, well,
Were you
not-
on the board?
I was. That was one of my first, so I've been 7 or 8 years now, so it was one of the first things, so.
Okay.
Probably about
So I
7,
thought it was-
so
yeah.
about, so for the rest of you, so about 7 years ago or so, they proposed doing a solar field. And basically you go down Great Pond and then up this like dirt road, and then there was this field there.
Correct.
And there was this whole plan, and we had hearings about it, and it got permitted, but never built.
So the lower part of this site, isn't there a single-family residence
Yeah.
there?
yes, Yeah.
And
that
are you going to
was-
talk about that?
That's actually the lot next to us. We're not taking
Oh.
over that residence. That's,
Okay.
Brooks is maintaining that.
Okay.
So
And-
we're adjacent to that house.
Okay, and
Yeah, but it gets at the point as we get into this, the topography is such that.
Correct. Yes.
It slopes up, right? Yeah, it's a heavy
Yeah.
slope up. Okay.
And-
Yep.
so this is very helpful to show us what part of the site is in the watershed district and what isn't.
Yeah.
My, when I look at that, what I'm thinking is that that part of the watershed, I think connects to that open lawn on the front of Brooks that borders Great Pond. And of interest to me, but not visibly obvious, is that there's a stream that goes through that open pond that then goes underneath one of the roads and then drains down by the boathouse into the lake. And so, although that part of the watershed looks like, sure, it's watershed, but it's not that close to the lake, because it's proximate to one of the streams, it actually accelerates movement to the lake. And as I know you're aware, our interest is sole drinking water supply.
Yeah.
So it's a very, when I look at different parts of the watershed, I'm always looking at, well, what's the slope and where are the streams, even small ones, because that accelerates the movement of anything in the stormwater into the lake. And so this is one of those places where it's proximate to a stream.
All right. Thank you.
So there's an elevated concern.
Okay. So this is a little bit more looking at the property itself. Now, west is to the top of the page, and the Brook School is at the bottom of the page, and Great Pond Road is the road that borders actually right there.
And John,
the
I think
western
that
side of the site.
hairpin turn is shown on the bottom left.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Highlighted here in this site is the wetland boundaries and the different setbacks up until 100-foot buffer that you see highlighted here. And you can see, and it's very apparent, that the area that is upland is the hilly site that you've mentioned, and I think
Right.
this is where possibly the solar panels were planned for.
Yes.
This area where you have the meadow is it's a drumlin looking like site, and it's a fairly steep area of the site.
Is the back side, the far side away from Great Pond, are those wetland buffers based on wetlands that start in Boxford?
Yes, and I think the next slide will show you. So the town limit actually limits our site, and I can show you a little bit more closer in the next upcoming. And yes, they start in Boxford, and they feed onto North Andover. So you can see immediately the topography here that I have been talking about.
And is that the house on the lower right, the single family?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. If we go next, the remaining buildable area is currently highlighted in this purple. And I would like to also mention that part of the land acquisition is Edgewood has been entering into agreement with the Brook School. And they have, part of the covenant is the existing woodlands that is at the western side of the site to be conserved, as well as a view shed line that is highlighted in red that is restricted, has some restrictions from the Brook side about what they see from their campus on multiple points that the design team has been studying.
So a couple follow-up points.
Yes.
Is the edge of the parcel we're talking about solely within North Andover? Does that any?
Yes, the entirety of the parcel.
But does Brooks own land into Boxford?
Yes.
Okay. And why did you exclude any Boxford land?
Because we just looked at this one parcel, John. This is roughly a 32-acre parcel, and that's all we were interested in, was just that one parcel.
Okay.
If we need to tap into that parcel on the backside for maybe some access, if it comes down to it, we're gonna do that with them. They're willing to do whatever we need to make it work.
Okay. And
But
the other question is, it strikes me looking at this that everything's sloped here.
Yes.
And what's the typical grade we're talking about?
What's the?
Typical grade we're talking about, just the grade of the slope that exists today.
It's written here in very small font. I don't know if you guys.
I'd say it's about. Hi, I'm Anna Curtis Heald with Crowley Cottrell Landscape Architects. It is a very steep site. I think within the purple area, my guess is the average is about 4 to 1 slope. I don't have a percentage.
Okay, so it is
but
pretty
it's-
steep. I'm
it's
just
very
trying to
steep.
get the
Yes.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
So are you gonna have to terrace the site then?
We'll show you how we've been approaching this site.
So on the bottom of this diagram,
Yeah.
where it's dark green,
Yes.
am I correct that that is a steep slope descending onto Great Pond Road?
Yes.
And it's currently wooded?
Yes.
And are there any plans to change the nature of that woodland on that slope?
No.
No. So that'll all be part of that conservation restriction, Peter,
Okay,
as well as up to that red line. You see the red
Okay.
line there? We're gonna, that whole area is gonna be a no-build zone,
okay,
from there to Great Pond Road.
Yeah.
great.
And I should also mention that part of the agreement is that the main access to the site will not happen from Great Pond Road, will happen from Washington Street on the Boxford side. Great Pond Road will only be utilized for emergency vehicles only.
So I have a, go ahead.
That actually ties into
Yeah.
what I was really getting
Yeah.
at before,
So-
so now I understand.
Yeah, so I was
Yeah.
kind of skipping ahead. So I guess on the next page, so Short Street doesn't exist right now.
Not in this plan, but right now here, it's shown on the plans
Show it, yeah.
in this plan. So now you can see the full or the conceptual plan that we are proposing for the site. You've mentioned Short Street, so I will start with Short Street. So the site will be accessed from Washington Street via Short Street, and then there will be a right turn into the site itself. The red line is the North Andover Boxford line, and the Short Street run at the edge of the client's property, but still on the Brooks property, on the North Andover side.
So Short Street doesn't exist currently.
It's a paper street, yes.
It's not developed, it does exist, it's a paper street now.
Exists on a recorded plan at the registry.
Okay, so it's a paper street. So it will become a private way or a public way?
That's the part that we're working
We're
on now.
investigating.
Okay, to be
Yep.
determined.
Okay. It's arguable whether they need a subdivision.
Yeah.
So is the idea here that you would lease or rent Brooks' property, or are you purchasing the property?
We're purchasing the property.
So it would no longer be Brooks.
Correct, this 32-acre site.
Is there any part of your site that would still be part of Brooks?
The only piece will be depending on how the Short Street access is connected. If we have to, so that, where the curve is on that Short Street going up to Washington Street, that's called Lot C. If we need to cut into Lot C to make that
Okay.
access work, that's the only piece. And we probably, just so that everybody knows, we did meet with Boxford. We met with Ross, I can't think of, Probernayer, I believe is his last name. He's conservation agent plus the planning, Gene's position. So we've met and walked that so that they know what we're looking at doing as well.
So I'd say, yeah, definitely, obviously got to work through the private versus public, but to the extent, based on the nature of your business, there is an increased use of, there can be, emergency vehicles, ambulances, things like that.
Sure.
That it would certainly need, it can't just be a driveway, it's got to be a road sufficient for emergency vehicles. So to the extent that it could be a public road, I think that would be preferable, but, obviously you're limited by other factors, so, but it would certainly, it can't just be, whittled down to a driveway.
And you're referring to the Short Street
Correct.
part of the road?
Correct, yeah, the interior roads, are different,
Okay.
but the access.
And you can see Philippe shows on that right-hand side as well. When we meet with the fire department, if they need fire department access or emergency access from Great Pond Road, then we certainly will put that in there. And there's an entrance there now, Peter, that's how they get up to Hayvat Field. And so we would look at utilizing that same entrance area, if it's required, which we think it will be.
When you say utilize it, it used to be that you had to turn off Great Pond onto the single-family driveway,
Yep.
then immediately go left. Will
Yes.
that still be the route?
We don't know yet, but that's what we think it will be.
Okay.
Yep, that's all part of the deliberation.
The plan that you will see is counting on using that access.
Okay.
But we will have to speak with the fire department
But-
and see.
Right now, it's just sort of like a trodden path, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Okay.
All right, so if we access the site through Short Street, we are going to have to develop something to go over this portion of the wetland right here in this brown in a form of, we are studying this to get into the main road that will lead to the development itself. And this is the road that will go all the way up to the top of the hill, and actually the other way. The intent is that people will go by 5 duplexes for 10 townhomes, and then approach the larger building, which is the east building, drop guests or pick up people on the right-hand side, and then continue in a one-way road all around the hilltop to come back down and exit the site. The site is organized with the east building being the largest building and the west building a smaller building on the western side. The western building will open onto that terrace and then onto the conservation land that will be, which grade will slightly be adjusted to accommodate the roads and the topography. The intent here is to maintain the nature of the agricultural nature of the site. The discussions is with the client about how can we transform this site into, or utilize this site for agrarian purposes, grow their own food, provide a farm on site that will feed the restaurant of the community. Across from the larger building on the other side, closer to the Boxford line, we have located the outdoor amenities that are needed for the residents. Passive recreation such as tennis courts or bocce court or something of the sort out there. Again, we will have to cross the wetlands with some sort of crossing and to reach this upland and the meadow on the other side. In regard to fire access, the fire lane at the moment comes in as an emergency access from Great Pond Road. It intersects the main road of the site, and then it goes on the western side of the townhomes as well as the larger building. Still, this needs to be figured out with the fire department about all the details of that road, but we anticipate that they would want to service the building from that side as well.
Hold on, can you go back, Gene? What is that line that parallels Great Pond and dips below the written label existing woodland?
It's a very conceptual way of showing walking path around the campus, knowing that people want to be outdoor and go loop around. So this is pedestrian path.
Okay, sort of a tangential question. So I love the kind of amenities here. This campus would be very close to the lake and also to Brooks. And I think that there are, while during the discussion phases, there are a lot of, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, to the extent you guys caught it with the college, that there are opportunities for synergy between, say, using the lake, right? Having the ability to book some kayaks and transportation, some of your folks go down to the lake so they can kayak or walk around the paths that we have there and these new improvements that we're just talked about making. So I think like while you're doing this, think about how close this is. Edgewood's close to some of the trails over there. This satellite campus is really close to the lake, so having, you can't just walk across Great Pond Road, but having a shuttle that goes down there. Same with, I think there's, when I first heard about this idea of the campus here, I think it's a great location. As long as we can get all the wetland stuff kind of figured out. I think it's a wonderful location. But there is this opportunity, there's such a great opportunity for older people here and younger people at Brooks to learn from each other. So it seems like you guys are having great conversations about the land swap, but I would just still encourage that to say, are there ways that Brooks students can come and participate here, or the residents can come and use or participate at Brooks, because I think there's such a opportunity to use those things together that would make this a great space.
So we have already started those conversations with Brooks, so I'll say to you, in our opinion and in Brooks's opinion, this is gonna be a match made in heaven, right? We're all meeting together and talking a lot, and all the design that you're gonna see, we've presented this to Brooks. We've met with him multiple times, made some tweaks as we talked about it with him, and you'll see, you know what we do at Edgewood. It's not a fly-by-night organization. Nope. We really take care with our buildings, with our construction, and even, doing that conservation restriction, as we talked about right up front. We understand the importance of all of that, as does Brooks, and it's a great relationship, and we know it's gonna continue, and we talked about all those things, Eaton, the students coming over, we want them to still use the paths, and for us to be able to go onto their campus, and we're all working through all of those pieces.
Great, so, the impacts, right? Putting this is such a great place to put this in town, because it needs to all be centralized, but also, if you put this in other neighborhoods, it could be a real impact on neighbors. Here, your neighbors are pretty much just Brooks, and maybe a couple other small ones. But so I think it's a great location. Before I get to that, one other thing that hopefully you can discuss is as part of the bylaw, that you don't need to have a nursing home on this campus, and I assume that there's not the nursing home on campus, but if you could discuss how the residents here, if they needed, you know, either emergency care or higher level care, how they would get that and how the two sites would interact.
Before we get to that, can I go
Yeah,
back to,
I just want that
wanted to
later on.
comment on a point you had made. So, we know on the other Edgewood campus, you make very good, well-thought-out, low-impact use of the lake with the trails and the kayak canoe racks. That's, you know, I've spoken before that that's really a best practice for institutional landowner on the lake. It's really an example for others to look at. And in fact, when the town rebuilt our boat storage for residents, we used yours as our example.
Right.
In your conversations with Brooks for this campus, at this stage, do you anticipate any lake use by these residents through Brooks?
So we haven't had that conversation with Brooks. We've touched the surface of that. We've had those conversations. We haven't determined how that will work yet, but that would be our intention, is that we would have an area somewhere within Brooks where we would set up our kayak racks and do those same pieces. And for us, we're looking at, you know, additional dining spaces here that our residents from Edgewood would come down and participate.
Yeah.
And then these residents would go over to Edgewood and they'd be able to have that participation.
Right.
We're not gonna build all the amenities in this location. We're not gonna put a pool here because we already have a pool at Edgewood. So, you know, we're really looking at it as being complementary to Edgewood and just making it a better place for everybody.
So that sounds,
Sort of getting ahead, but like, how are they complementary? How are you marketing? Like, who's gonna be at this place versus who's gonna be at the other place? Will people migrate from one to the other? How does it?
So I'm not a marketing person, John, so I can't really answer that for you. But it's, you know, you'll see as Philippe shows you the building design, it's just a different design and it's a different setting with the way that he's got the buildings tiered and all those places. So I don't know if everybody knows this, but we have a tremendous waiting list at Edgewood. And we know with the waiting list that we have, that some of those people will never be able to move into the campus. And that's really what started us down this road. You know, as Gene said, we've talked multiple times, we've looked at multiple pieces of property with the town that has become available, and this is the one that has caught everybody's eye because it's a beautiful site. And, you know, when you walk up on that hill and you look out over it, you can just see the whole thing coming together. And so that's the big driving point for us, is that we have a tremendous wait list, and we need to take care of these folks. We need to help them in that continuum. And so we'll have shuttle vans that will bring people back and forth. Some may drive on their own. You know, it's going to be by choice certainly, because our big piece is that the residents are the architects of their lives, and some of them will just want to drive. Others will want to get transported, and we'll assist them both ways in that.
so I know this is a very small piece of the plan, but given that I had some interaction with your good use of the lake at Edgewood, as you go through the plan, I would be interested with what your discussions are progressing with Brooks for how the lake use would be done there.
Sure.
And understanding it's Brooks' property, I'd still be interested in hearing that.
Yep. I think for us, Peter, worst case scenario is that we would also, maybe these residents would go over to Edgewood and use
Yeah.
the kayak racks.
I'm not suggesting you.
It'll be somewhere
I'm
within
not
there.
suggesting you shouldn't do it. I'm
Right. Yep.
saying whatever it is you talk to us about would
Yep,
be
well-
another best practice that I want to hear about.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I just have a quick question because I'm not familiar too much with the infrastructure on Great Pond Road. Is there sewer on Great Pond Road?
So the sewer, actually, there is a sewer on Great Pond Road that goes back, what is it, Dave? Which location that's at capacity
So the,
to the south?
What's the plan here?
Hmm?
What's the plan here for?
We're gonna go to the left.
Right at the bend, there is a sewer connection.
This guy's coming up, he's gonna tell us some
Here we
stuff.
Oh, there we go.
Civil engineer with niche engineering.
What's your name?
Nicholas Botts.
Okay.
We would connect up north of the plan, about a mile to the nearest pump station.
In which town?
In
Has to be
North
North
Andover.
Andover.
Yeah.
Ray Pump Station, correct.
I'm not good with the north-south thing, so.
Box was fat, no silver.
Well, then, answer that question.
And there's enough capacity in Ray's station? I mean, you're doing those,
So we have
Yep.
talked with the town's consultant as well as DPW.
Yep.
And they said that there's capacity within that.
okay,
I've established the account, but DPW is overseeing it
great.
with Woodward and Curran.
And this comes to us as a special permit, right?
Yeah.
So we'll go through that. Okay, let's keep moving.
To give more context, the density here is 80 units in the east and west building, plus an additional 10 units in the 5 duplexes of the townhouses. And
Say those
limited-
numbers again?
80 units, all two bedrooms in the east and west buildings. And then 10 townhouses in the 5 duplexes on the right-hand side. So a total of 90 units overall on campus.
And just to put that in context, 90 units here, how many units at Edgewood?
Apartments, 212 apartments, and then you have the 24 cottages.
Okay.
And the maximum we could,
Separate cognitive unit too.
we have a 40-bed
Yeah,
assisted living unit, and then the 40-bed nursing home as well.
yeah.
And so we, just so that you know as well, we do actuarial studies. So we already know, we've already completed those studies. We know that our existing nursing home can handle this additional resident load there based on actuarial studies that have been completed.
All right.
All right.
So a little bit zoom in on the site to tell everybody how things are organized. So each one of those duplexes will have a curb cut driveway to lead to the 2 garages that are right there in the middle between the 2 homes. And then if you live in the larger building, you will take this driveway down into a garage that is covered under the east building. If you're coming to get dropped off, you get dropped off in between the east and west building. And if you're a truck coming to pick up trash or deliver food, you will pass both buildings and you'll back into the west building at this area to deliver the goods and pick up the trash. And then you'll continue straight on into the loop road. The eastern side of the campus is the downhill, and it'll be terraced and garden in between the wings of the building in a way that will be further developed. Native planting and sustainable ways of doing the landscape. But right now, we know that this area will need to be terraced. And we intend also to have all the apartments that touch the grade to have on-grade patios, which residents could plant and personalize as well. If we go to the next one. So here we're moving on to the architecture plans, and we're starting, this is the, we can skip to the next one. Yeah. Here is an axometric view of how this complex will be fitting into the hillside. You can see that from the western side, from the brook side, it appears as a 2-story building or a 1-story with a roof and dormers in it. And then the buildings will appear as 3 stories and 3.5 stories on the valley side or the downhill side. It's organized in fingers, and it steps down again to respect the 35-foot maximum that the town allows in that residential area. I think we're in residential 2. The cottages or the townhomes will be 2-story again on the hillside and 1-story on the roadside. Another view of the building. In this, I think what appears very prominent here is that the east and west buildings, because of the nature of the population that needs to connect with these 2 buildings, we need to provide a weatherproof all-season kind of crossing. So we are proposing here a bridge that connects the east and west buildings. This triangular shape is the appurtenance that is beyond the 35-foot limit for building height, but this will include the elevator overrun. It will include also a space for people to sit and wait for the elevator before they go in or they go out. These are longer distances that residents have to travel, And we want to provide a resting area along the way so that people can go from one end to another.
If you were on the Brooks campus
Yes.
or coming up Great Pond Road, what will you see?
We have done those studies, but they're not included in the packet that we submitted. We can provide this in the
Yeah,
next
I'm
meeting.
just trying to get some idea of the
Yes.
relative prominence of
Yes.
this.
You will see a two-story building at the top of the hill, which is just that. The rest will be hidden by the topography.
Yeah.
And that was part of the agreement between the Brooks and Edgewood.
We gave them 4 different views, John, that they asked us to do, one from the football field, one from their quad, one from their student residence. And so they've approved all of those views.
They
so-
have worse stake in this than anybody
Yes,
else. So,
yep,
yeah.
yep, and that was all part of we did all that stuff with them.
If we go to the next one. Again, this is a view from the hillside and how the building steps down with terraces and on-grade apartments. And the fire road is right there where the cursor is that goes at the bottom of the building, servicing servicing this side of the campus. And this is more of the view if you were on the ground. This is the building and the two-story building that the Brooks will see from their campus. And even because of how the topography is, this building is below the hilltop, so they will see the roof and above the roof only. So it'll be very minimal visibility from their campus. And I think from Great Pond Road, given the vegetation and the high trees, you probably will see almost nothing except when there's no leaves on the trees.
So we basically agreed with them that from the top of that ridge line, 10 feet above that ridge line was as high as we could go. And then we can show you those other drawings at some point, but very small sections of the roofs do you see within that area. John, we should also, if you realize, Peter, none of our buildings are in the watershed district.
Yeah.
We made sure that we stayed out of that whole area. That was intentional, just to, in case you didn't notice that, I want to make sure you guys knew that.
Thank you.
Going from the ground up, everything in blue is units. It'll be filled up with units. Some amenities on the floors. You can see how the building is built against the hill. So it's one-sided. That long arc is one-sided building. And if we go to the next one.
What does BOH stand for?
Back of house, like service areas, trash chutes and other things like this, mechanical areas. Some amenities are located here on the campus. What is that?
He said Board of Health.
Oh,
BOH,
okay.
Board of Health.
Not right there.
Yeah.
But at the wellness area, which will be a fitness room and some exercise equipment. And if we go to the next one, again, more units. And the next one. This is where the covered parking will start appearing. And if we can go next. This is basically the main floor of the big building. People get dropped off in front of the amenities, can go in, or people come in by car. They can park in this underground parking garage and then get into the amenities. Across the street, because we have the relationship between Edgewood and this campus, we are making sure that if you don't live on site, you can also come in and partake in the activities. So the western building is the more public building of that campus. So it will have, and if we go to the next slide, it will have the dining room and the multipurpose room and the kitchen and a terrace that will open up onto these main functions. We imagine that people of Edgewood and this new campus will really mingle in there. And that multipurpose room will also serve as a theater, a function space, yet still to be defined for the residents of Edgewood and this campus. The second floor of that building, inside the dormers, will also be residential units, and it will be the top floor of the development overall. Now, I think maybe people understand better how this building is nestled into the site. So you will immediately see that the building is actually 2 stories on the Brook side, but is below the ridge, and that's why it appears really even smaller than what it is from the Brook side. In between those 2 buildings, this is where the main road will come in. If you live in the campus, you'll mostly go on the right-hand side, get into the lobby and the amenities. The parking is one level below, and then below is residential units. It's a very unconventional way of putting a building together, only because the site is fairly steep and hilly.
So help me understand, which side here is the large east building, and which side is the east and the west?
East is on the right-hand side. And
Your right.
This one,
Okay.
yes, or the page right.
Yeah.
And then the western side is the left-hand side, the higher building,
And
if we want to
where is Brooks School, right? Over here?
all the way to there,
Okay,
beyond the ridge.
got it.
Yeah.
And I think you can see the next, it gives you more a sense of which building is bigger than which, because here
Got
we're
it.
cutting across the long
Yep.
wings, and you see the residential wing going down the hill, and then the fire lane at the end, and the road in between.
So it might be a little too early, I guess, in your guys' process. I'm just curious, is there any ledge within that site?
So we've already gone out and we've done a series of test borings, and we didn't hit any ledge.
Okay.
It's all basically glacial till is what we've found at this point. We'll do more
Yeah.
borings as we move on in that process, but
Yeah. A lot of blasting.
If we can zoom out a little bit from this. This is just an example of a floor plan. The townhouses will have a covered garage, each individual, just like a single family or a duplex homes are designed. These will be on 2 floors. And next. We've put together a series of landscape imagery that are our target for this. Again, as I said, this is a beautiful site. We want to maintain its natural feel. So this is why the landscape will be very much natural, will be meadows-like, increasing the infiltration on site and using natural materials. But again, thinking also about how this site could be a resource to the campus, providing food and having a small farm on the site to feed the campus.
Just the look and feel like of the townhouses, is it gonna be similar to the existing single-family houses, or what's the?
I think it's coming up next.
So we are yet to develop, we are still in the concept, but yes, they will look like homes, they will have roofs, and they will echo the neighborhood, and you will see some images that we have later on.
Just my personal opinion, but
Yes.
the single-family houses at Edgewood are the nicest single-family houses in North Andover.
The one at
Yeah,
Edgewood.
that's what he
Yes,
asked,
we
and if
we
you
like
can
them as
similar.
well. We like them very much, yes.
Yeah.
They're very simple and elegant.
You on the wait list, John? Are you trying to
Good
get in?
proportions.
No, I
Yes.
do know people there,
Yeah.
it makes me scared. This is good.
Other images that will be guiding how we will look at the landscape with natural elements again, and wood and stone and local materials. In terms of architecture, and that's what we showed to the Brooks, we got inspiration again from the agrarian nature of the site and the farms, and we did some research. There are some long and longitudinal farms, farm buildings that exist in New England, and this long building at the top of the hill will be inspired by those buildings, like echoing the roof shapes and the materials, again, of these buildings. And then when you take a farm and you translate it into architecture, these are some of the examples that we are looking at. Again, natural materials, a lot of daylight, and like really connection with the outdoors and nature as much as the site will allow it.
I think that
The
looks
top left
awesome.
is beautiful.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that very
So,
well
so
fits
it's
the site.
this inspiration
Yeah,
that we're looking,
Yeah.
whether it's the townhouses or it's the larger building. I want to say one thing here, that the larger building will most probably will not allow a sloped roof because of the maximum 35 feet limit that we have. So we are working of how to terrace this building and what the roof would be. They will have some mechanical equipment, but also probably some green roofs as well.
Gene, remind me, just because it's late and I forget, this has its own affordable, it's not subject to our affordable restrictions because it's got its own.
It has its own density and affordability, so there's a calculation.
Right, it's within the bylaw.
Within the
itself, right.
CCRC bylaw.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Sorry, could you expand on that a little bit? It just.
So we have
How
a,
many units?
90 units.
How big of park?
Close
many
to
acres?
33 acres.
33 acres.
32 point something.
And so how does that fit in with the?
So there's a, there's,
affordability?
I don't know what the 90 is, so they're allowed so many units per acre, and if they want to exceed that, they can. However, they have to pay in lieu of an affordability requirement, which is what they
Right,
did at
which is
their
what we did.
original site.
Yeah.
So originally, they paid $800,000 into our Affordable Housing Trust, and they've maxed out. I think the total number now is about 280 units, all in, including the Woodland Inn.
Oh, it's
At-
pretty close to that, Gene,
It's-
yeah.
Yeah, 280. So the 90 units, depending on what that calculation is, I didn't review it for tonight's meeting, but
Right.
if it exceeds what they're allowed in density, then they trip into the affordability.
So we have a inclusionary housing bylaw, which says that if you build eight or more units, then you have to have 15% affordable. But because this particular bylaw that they would fall under already had a calculation for how to calculate affordable units within this, we kept it separate, so it said that it doesn't fall under our inclusionary bylaw, it falls under its own personal bylaw, so we'll deal with that under the CCRC. I knew there's a calculation in there, I just don't recall off the top of my head exactly what it is. But there is one,
Yeah.
but it's not, I think it equates probably pretty similar, but, so there will be some affordable contribution to be determined later on. I will say that I think that the concept and the work that you've done already is exemplary. The presentation was fantastic, and I think this is a wonderful idea, and look forward to it. Hopefully coming for a permit. Yep, go, please.
How are you organized, the company, or how are you financing this, and how does it work once?
So we're a not-for-profit. Edgewood is a not-for-profit organization. And we have a parent company that's, we created that's called Edgewood Senior Solutions Group. And then we just built a facility in Londonderry, New Hampshire, which is 190 independent apartments, and then a 40-bed assisted living. New Hampshire assisted living is different than Massachusetts. You can do more, so we did not need a nursing home component up there for the CCRC. So that's just assisted living plus 190 units. And they're all standalones, right? They support themselves. They don't, if one doesn't impact the other organization. But certainly for us to continue to build, that gives us economy of scales with purchasing products and materials and all those other pieces, which is important. And plus, I mean, for those of you that know Edgewood, you know, we are a great asset to the community, and we do a great job. We feel as though we do a tremendous job there, and it's evident by our wait list, which has been, our wait list has been full for 4 years. We have no openings. So, you know, when somebody passes or moves on, there's somebody that's just taking that space. So it's just a tremendous organization. And so we will get financing,
Yeah.
right? We get our financing, and then
From
just
whom-
like anybody
from
else.
whom?
Huh?
From whom?
From a private firm, so we used a private group for this last financing up at the Baldwin, and we will do the same thing on this one. And then we'll turn that into municipal bonds after, right? You have a certain period of, I'm not a finance guy, I'm just telling you what I hear, and then those get turned into municipal bonds after.
So I would say for any newer members of the board, if you guys haven't been over to the current Edgewood facility in town, I definitely recommend it if you guys could give them.
Absolutely, anybody that would like to see
it.
Edgewood, you can see the
It
assisted living facility. You can go online and you can look at the Baldwin as well, or you can drive up there to see that facility. But Philippe did the design on the Baldwin, and it's really, when he talks about the openness and the glass and the natural light, it's just a tremendous feeling when you walk up there and see that. And that facility has very few openings in it currently.
One of the interesting things in town is that there's housing is always a contentious issue and a lot of different opinions, but the need for this type of housing is something that I think a significant majority of the community agrees on as both necessary and lacking. And so to be able to try to find something that fits and is also done well is, you know, when we have that opportunity, I think it's important to take advantage of.
And those numbers are continue to climb as well for folks that are, you know, turning those ages. That whole baby boomer generation is still, you know, those numbers are still increasing. And so there's a lack of housing for seniors. And I think, I don't know, John, if you had asked on maybe the medical portion as well, you know, we will have a nursing staff on the building as well as we have nurses' aides. And, you know, like with our Woodlands Inn, we communicate through radios, right, two-way radios. If we needed to have assistance, we would call that as well from Edgewood. So there's plenty of support staff. And we'll have staff at this building as well, naturally, maintenance people, custodians, you know, housekeepers and those types of things. But some of the services will come from Edgewood.
Yeah, I think
as
that just
well.
needs to be, if you ultimately get to the special permit, I think, as I recall, when we kind of reworked the bylaw, that there is some specific language about what we need to see to meet the bylaw in terms of how the two properties work together. So just
Yep.
make sure you refer back to that.
Yep, absolutely.
and work that stuff in. Okay, any other board members, questions, comments? Any other, okay, great start, thank you for the discussion.
Okay, thank you.
So I think you guys still have work to do, and then at some point, we hope to see you back for an application.
Great.
You'll be seeing us.
Oh, yeah, sure, sure.
So I am one of.
Colin, wait till you come up. So just for clarification, this is not a public hearing, but where you've been here this whole time, and I think it's worthwhile to have our discussion, more than welcome to make a comment.
So I may be the only neighbor in North
Okay.
Andover.
Good to
I'm
hear
Ed
from you.
Peterson at 1 Pond Street. So
Can we
I
pull
have
up the
about
map, just where that is? Yep, I know you're going to do that thing.
My house shows up to the left of that drawing, actually, right there. If you keep the cursor moving to the left, that's me.
That's you.
Is that the newer house that was built?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember that house.
Yes, so that's me. So I'm just here because I'm curious in two capacities, as a neighbor and then also as part of the Friends of North Andover Trails. I've been eyeballing Short Street for a number of years as a potential recreational opportunity because it is an old street. It's a graded bed in there. It's very overgrown, but there are a couple of Essex County stone bounds that go back to pre-split between North Andover and Andover. They actually have an A and a B on them, not an NA. So that to me seems like an opportunity with reopening Short Street to provide some access to recreational land back there. There's an enormous amount of undeveloped land here between the Brooks parcels and a couple of other private parcels, as well as power line easement back there. It's over 100 acres, all told, back here. Concerns from my part have to do somewhat with wildlife, which I don't know that planning is particularly concerned about, but this is currently an area that allows very free movement of birds, deer, small predators, and so the reopening Short Street, cutting across the wetlands there, is going to bisect that, and it'd be nice if there was some thought given to making sure that wildlife could move through easily so that we maintain the things that make this such a great place. And then I know that my other neighbors who are primarily in Boxford are going to be somewhat concerned about the traffic flow because this tells me that all of the traffic in and out of the site is going to come out of Short Street, and most of it is going to hang a left on Washington Street and then come into North Andover. And we have two problematic intersections there. One you can see on this map where Lake Shore comes in, that has very poor sight lines. Reasonably frequent accidents, and then we also, I think all of us know, Bradford Great Pond is a really difficult intersection, and so this, you know, if we start having shuttle buses on the regular, we're definitely adding to an already busy and sort of difficult area. So it'd be nice to see that addressed. And then maybe a final issue, given that we were expecting solar panels as a neighbor, is there any thought about on-site power generation? Because with this huge south-facing hillside, this is a really prime site to take advantage of that. So, and with that, I'll close it up and let everybody go home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Thanks for your
comments.
comments.
Good comment. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, I mean, just if you could take note of some of those things. So, Mr. Peterson, for your just edification, so this was a discussion item, so this is our kind of first time at the board hearing about this. I assume it could come back for another discussion, but ultimately, based on the bylaw we have, it would require a special permit with notice to abutters and hearings, public hearings, and stuff like that. Seems to me these guys have been pretty good at addressing issues. That the wildlife one, I think that's a first for me. I'm not sure that we've had that come up, so I'd love to hear any kind of comments about that in the future. And then as well, obviously, traffic will be addressed. And then, yeah, if you could just talk about solar eventually, that would be great too. And maybe if you guys could exchange information, that way, if you have any questions, you guys can talk. It's definitely advantageous, I find, for neighbors to talk ahead of these hearings and see what concerns and what can be worked out. I think that's one of the great things about coming here for a discussion is we can get these things ahead of the public hearings and maybe have solutions before we have more questions.
Yep,
Okay, wonderful.
definitely. Okay.
Wonderful.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, you as well.
Okay. All right. Can we get, what do we got left, if anything? Can we get a motion to approve the planning board schedule? Everyone good with the planning board schedule? I looked at it, looks fine to me. Meeting calendar? Looks good. Good. Do we need a motion for that? I don't think so. Just schedule the meetings. Okay. We get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from October 1st?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I hesitate to ask, would anything before we adjourn? Peter, I'm looking at you. No, we're good? Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded by John. All in favor? Aye.